Good evening everyone. So in previous class we saw some topics. Any questions from any of those topics? If you have, you can ask. Otherwise we'll continue with today's topics. Any questions? No questions. So I have just taken some definitions of in unemployment and poverty, based on which you can, if there is a question, it will be usually basic question on unemployment and poverty. So I have just taken only the definitions. After that we will take fiscal policy. So in India, unemployment means if a person is looking for work but unable to work, then only it is called unemployment. That means out of the entire population of India, a lot of people are not looking for work for various reasons. Imagine they are retired, then that person cannot be considered as a part of unemployment. Or a person who is 15 years old, 12 years old is not a part of unemployment rate. Whenever we consider unemployment, imagine a woman who is married and her in-laws are not allowing her to work, she is not looking for work, then not part of unemployed. First, they should be looking for work. Second, they should not be able to find work. Then only we consider, you can say, this as a part of unemployment rate, and this is the definition of unemployment rate. So not having enough paid work or not doing work that makes full use of their skills and abilities is underemployment. A couple of years ago, economic survey said in India underemployment is a bigger problem compared to unemployment. So you should know what is the meaning of underemployment also. Most of the case, underemployment is simply where a person is unable to find job according to their qualifications or skills. People who are have studied, you can say, professional courses like engineers, and some people who have mathematics or PhDs, etc. They are working in government, especially they are working at very lower levels. So this shows huge amount of underemployment. Even not just in government, in other areas, in private sector also, when they get into the job, they do not have, many cases they do not have the necessary skills, but they may have qualifications. If they have the skills, in India skills are not recognized standalone, they need to have qualifications. So there also you can say they are unable to get the job. This is leading to huge amount of underemployment. This is, you can say, difference between unemployment and underemployment. I think yesterday or day before yesterday we saw what is disguised unemployment, where marginal productivity of labor is zero. What is the meaning of this? Marginal productivity of labor. When extra unit of labor is added to work, they are not adding any extra value. We took the example where 8 people are actually working in a field, but 4 people were enough. From 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, all these people are, you can say, disguisedly unemployed because their marginal productivity. After 4th, every extra person that you add into the field are adding zero value to the field. That means you can see marginal productivity of labor is zero. More people are employed than actually needed in factories. Consider in PSUs, in railways, in all these cases, in public sector banks, there are actually more people employed. In railways, some agency has estimated there are three people actually to do one person's job. That means, what is the biggest problem here? They are not adding much value. One person could have done this job. The 2 more people, whoever are there, they are, you can say, disguisedly unemployed. Biggest disguised unemployment in India is in agriculture sector, but otherwise in other areas also it is still found. It is found in agriculture. Unorganized sector also it is high because it is difficult to do the work study and identify how many people are necessary. They will just keep adding more. This is disguised unemployment. Then seasonal unemployment. Some type of sectors can only work in certain seasons. Tourism, for example, every area is not suitable for tourism in all seasons. So tourism as a sector operates only in certain kind of seasons. Agriculture also during kharif season, rabi season, sometimes depending upon, you can say, what type of land it is, rain-fed agriculture, then you can say only one type of season. Then food processing, because it gets raw materials from agriculture, that is also seasonal. If people are working in this type of, you can say, these are examples, these type of industries, they get, you can say, employment only seasonally. This occurs during certain seasons of the year. Lack of work during off season, this will create huge amount of migration to towns and cities. So this creates distress migration also. That means they will try to find any job, and even if it is paying very low. This leads to exploitation also. One problem is migration and lack of social security for people. So to solve this problem, we have introduced MNREGA to address this seasonal unemployment. Everybody knows about what is MNREGA, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. So this is MNREGA. I mean, basically we give 100 days of employment to people. This is what 100 days of employment to rural poor. And by doing this, we want to address this migration and also seasonal unemployment. This is the second type of unemployment. Then structural. Structural means the skills of whatever labor people have right now, these are not matching the kind of necessary skills that are demanded by the job market. Imagine because of some, take for instance, ChatGPT or some AI comes into picture and will do the job of whatever accountant is doing, or some script writer is doing the job, it is itself doing. So that means this entire niche will disappear. There is no need for this person to do this job. Now what about this person who has become an accountant after a 3-year degree? What will his skills be useful? In the market it will have very less value. That means the skills that this section of population have and what the market is actually demanding are different. Structural change is required. Why is it structural? Because to reskill this entire section of population, will it take more time, effort, money or not? So this is structural unemployment. It occurs because of technological change. That is one aspect. Second aspect is, if we don't change our, you can say, syllabus in our engineering colleges, medical colleges, etc., but things are changing rapidly on the ground level, then also you can say skills get outdated among people. If government is not responsive, then also it happens. The mismatch between jobs available in the market, skills of the available workers in the market. Skills get outdated, new skills are demanded in the market, then we can say that there is structural unemployment. Then cyclical. Cyclical is a result of business cycles. Business cycle will mean boom and bust cycles. Anybody knows what is this? Boom and bust means? When virtuous cycle is present in the economy, then it is called as a boom cycle. Then you can say growth is high and employment is also high. Bust cycle means when we are in a vicious cycle, people are losing their jobs, so demand is low and employment is also low. Depending upon that, usually a certain section of population will easily lose jobs. In India, textile and footwear industry, an organized sector, they will just say, from tomorrow you don't come, if you want, we will call you later. So that means you can say this entire section of population will lose jobs in cyclical. If the business cycle has gone, you can say down. So it is a result of business cycles, rises during recessions and declines with economic growth. Increased employment during virtuous cycle and decreased employment during vicious cycle. This is basically you can say cyclical unemployment. Frictional unemployment. Frictional means, it is also called search unemployment, when a person is leaving their existing job to find another better job. Maybe in the middle if they are even trying to get some skills also, or get the necessary training to get into a better job. This is called as frictional. So frictional unemployment is not necessarily bad for the country, because people are trying to get better jobs now, and this means you can say there is a better probability of more value addition by these people. That is called frictional unemployment. Even preparing for UPSC can be considered as frictional unemployment. At least for 1 or 2 years it can be considered as frictional unemployment. So this is also called search unemployment. Time lag between jobs when an individual is searching for a new job or switching between jobs. So people may invest time and resources in learning skills, new skills, or getting new knowledge between jobs also. That is also frictional unemployment. Then technological unemployment. This is a recent type of term that has been used in newspapers and you can say reports. It is a loss of jobs due to changes in technology. 2016 World Bank predicted that the proportion of jobs threatened by automation in India is 69%. That means all these jobs, whatever people are doing, this can easily be done by an AI probably in another 5 years. So that means you can see if such a massive amount of job loss happens, there is no easy way out of this solution. If imagine 70% people are going to lose their jobs, how will we handle that situation? So one of the solutions suggested is UBI. Probably you have heard of universal basic income, where tax is imposed on whoever is earning money through this AI, and that money is used to, as a redistributive mechanism, we will just give monthly minimum amount of income for everybody. So this is a possible type of scenario for the future because of technological unemployment. Coming to definition of poverty. In India, poverty is defined as a situation where people are unable to satisfy basic needs. So poverty in India, whenever we say poverty, we are talking about absolute poverty only. We are not usually talking about relative poverty. When other countries, in USA, president talks about poverty, he is not talking about absolute poverty, they are talking about relative poverty. But in India, we talk about absolute poverty. Absolute poverty means a condition where household income is below necessary level to maintain basic living standards. That means if you want to buy basic necessities like food, shelter, housing, you need to have some bare minimum amount of income. It could be say 100 rupees a day. If that person is earning less than this much, then that is absolute poverty. Absolute poverty is measured in terms of we can say amount of money. In India, it is, you can say, around 28 rupees, 32 rupees is defined per day. If a person is earning less than 32 in urban areas, less than 28 in rural areas, they are, you can say, they are under absolute poverty. This is called poverty line. When we draw a line, below this line, whoever is earning, they are all under absolute poverty. Above this line, they are not poor. This is how we have defined, you can say, poverty. So different committees have given different numbers with regard to poverty. Most recent is Niti Aayog, India's multidimensional poverty. In that 25% of India is poor. Before that we had this Rangarajan committee, he said approximately 30%, and even before that Suresh Tendulkar said around only 22% people in India are poor. So, but if you take worldwide standard, earlier 10 years ago $1 a day used to be definition of poverty, but today World Bank is considering, $1 a day used to be the definition of poverty earlier, now it is $3. But even if today you consider $1, that is 80-85 rupees, then about 50% people will come under poverty in India, because you can see that is a very high number for Indian context. So according to India's own definition, we can think of it as about 29% of Rangarajan committee, and multidimensionally poor is 25%. This is definition of poverty in India. Next, coming to fiscal policy. So far we have seen about all the details about monetary policy. Can we say technological unemployment is also structural unemployment? Yes, it is a loose term that is used, there is no exact definition. Unemployment that is created because of technological change is technological unemployment. We can call it structural because now we need, you can say, new type of skills and education for people who are losing their jobs. We can say that it is structural unemployment also. Fiscal policy, yesterday we saw, when monetary policy was there, RBI was controlling the economy. Right now government will control the economy. It has only two instruments. What are the instruments of government? Taxation and expenditure. Taxation is where it will raise revenue, expenditure is where it will spend money. It is the use of government revenue collection and expenditure to influence a country's economy. It refers to policy of government in relation to taxation, expenditure. Apart from this, when we are no longer able to use these normal mechanisms, we use a third mechanism which is called as debt. That means we take loan from people. So the amount of debt we take is relatively very less compared to the tax and normal spending that happens. So that is third instrument of policy. Fiscal policy is called budgetary policy of government. Why is it called budgetary policy? Anything that government does, it has to do through budget only. That means anything which is related to money, it has to do through budget. In polity, you would have studied that. We have created, king's powers have been divided into legislature, executive and judiciary. This is separation of powers. Because to reduce arbitrariness of decision making by the king, we created separation of powers. And along with that, we realized that along with separation of powers, we can also maintain checks and balances. Checks and balances means one organ will make sure that the other two organs are functioning well. For example, Prime Minister has the power to dissolve Lok Sabha. Lok Sabha has power to remove a judge by passing some sort of resolution. Similarly, they can even pass no confidence and remove, you can say, existing council of ministers. So that means you can see one has power over each other. And so this is checks and balances. As a part of checks and balances, what we have done is, we have given the power of, you can say, our custodian of public purse is actually legislature. That means who holds the public money, whatever money is taxed, whatever money we have received, That will all be there with the legislature. But who can actually spend this money is the executive. Because the money is with legislature and it can only be spent by executive, every year executive takes permission from legislature to spend this money. This process of taking permission from legislature itself is called as budget. That is why without budgetary permission, that means without passing of this budget or legislature's permission, it is impossible for government to spend any money. There are some exceptions where the permission is taken post facto, after the money is spent. In polity you would have studied, but otherwise majority of the time the money, if they have to spend it, then first they have to take permission from legislature and then only they can spend it. That is why fiscal policy is called as budgetary policy of government. You understood this? This sort of conceptual questions have earlier been asked about, you can say, fiscal policy, fiscal policy. Why it is called budgetary policy of government? Because in separation of powers, legislature is custodian of public purse and executive is responsible for spending. Executive takes permission from legislature every year through budget, only then it can spend money. So it uses expenditure, taxes, instruments. Objective is to influence production and employment favorably. Production means it is actually focusing on growth. And growth, production increases, growth increases. We already know that ultimate objective of government, fiscal policy is what? Objective of monetary policy was what? Inflation control. Objective of fiscal policy is increasing growth. So increasing growth means increasing production. Why are we trying to increase, you can say, production? So that it is a virtuous cycle is created and employment will also increase. Once growth and employment both will increase, then development will happen. Ultimate goal of India, ultimate goal of, you can say, Indian government is actually development. Growth is a necessary condition for development. Growth plus employment, it will lead to development. Growth, if it is happening, just production is happening, we don't know who is actually producing. It could be true that only imagine Adani is producing everything and he is earning all the money, it is also possible. But we want more people to be employed and they should get salaries, and that means when they get salaries, their quality of life improves, then we call it as development. There is also another possibility where growth, without much employment also, government intervention, that means redistributive policies of government will also lead to development. If employment is not happening, then the government will tax people whoever are rich and they will use that money, like for example we just saw UBI is that example. Now also MNREGA is that example. So that means there is another possibility. Growth can convert to development either through employment or through redistributive policies of government. You understood this? Coming to expansionary, contractionary fiscal policy, this we saw yesterday. Low taxes, high spending is expansionary policy. It is used to increase growth. In recession times, this is normal expansionary policy. But when there is a very serious recession, we usually take some sort of extraordinary measures, which usually they call sometimes as pump priming. Pump priming means government spending will increase more than normal situation. Usually we have only seen government will spend a little bit extra money, but here what we are going to do is sometimes even print currency, extra currency, and we will spend it. This is what we call as, this is like an extraordinary measure when we are in a serious situation only. This happened in 1928, Great Depression of USA. Until Great Depression, the belief in economists was that economy is supply led, supply side economics it was called. Supply side means people believed that all economy, all this entire virtuous cycle is starting because entrepreneurs in the country, they are investing all their money and they are creating jobs and they are producing. And that means entrepreneurs were taxed less and they were given tax breaks, and any problem, the solution was very simple. More people should invest more money. Then more production will happen, more people will be employed, they will get money, we can solve the problem. This was what was happening. But in 1928, because whatever the situation was, the Great Depression that happened that time, this supply side economics did not work at that point. So when it did not work, why it did not work was during First World War that happened between 1914 to 1919, US was exporting a lot of goods to Europe. But 1919, Treaty of Versailles happened and the end of First World War happened. And after this, Europe was able to produce everything on its own. That means they did reconstruction in the next 5 to 6 years. By 1927, 28, 29, the exports that were happening from US to Europe stopped completely. But in this decade, that is from 1910 to 1920, they had developed enough capacity to export to Europe. But now Europe is not buying anymore. What happens to stocks in USA? There is too much of inventory, there is too much of stock, they are unable to export it. Then Imagine if they are unable to export it, and within USA also people will not be able to buy that much because they are overproducing, then what happens in USA? If they are unable to sell, imagine 1000 cars are produced, 500 they used to export, now they are unable to sell, only 500 are sold. Next year will they produce more cars or less cars? Less. If they are producing less cars, people will lose jobs. When they lose jobs, demand will reduce, and when demand reduces, next year they will buy even less cars, and that means we have a vicious cycle. And this vicious cycle was so severe that it created the Great Depression of USA. And at that time, supply side economics believed that if we produce more, then it is a solution to all problems. But if in this context, if we produce more cars, will we be able to solve the problem? No. Right now, producing is not a solution. So at this point, Keynes, a new economist, gave a new theory. It was demand side economics. That means he gave a new explanation of how economy works. It is not actually starting from supply, it is starting from demand. And without demand, everything else is standing on demand. Without demand, other things in virtuous cycle will not work. And he said that we right now using extra supply, we cannot do anything. Only if we increase demand, demand will increase production, production will increase, you can say, or imagine if slowly if we can increase production, employment will increase, incomes will increase, then you can say further demand will increase and we can sell these cars. But how to increase demand? So to come out of financial recession, at this point, even during monetary policy will not work during this type of situation. Why it will not work? Yesterday we saw during a recession or after a recession, before a recession, monetary policy does not usually work well. Why?
People are afraid of spending.
What is this situation called? People are afraid of taking loan. It is called liquidity trap. So because of liquidity trap, all burden has now fallen upon government, and government has to do something about it. So basically Keynes said that ultimately what we should do is we should increase demand. How to increase demand? There are only few possibilities to increase demand. Either consumers should spend more money. In this situation in 1928, do they have any money to spend? No, they can't spend it. Investors should spend more. Investors' money is all stuck in their inventory. All the cars that have been made which have not yet been sold, that is where the money is. They don't have any money. Then exports minus imports. We should export more. Europe was the only country which was rich enough to buy all the type of goods that US was producing at that time, and they were not buying because they had produced their own goods. That means even exports are also not increasing. Only last possibility is government spending. US at that point of time believed that, basically people in US had a belief that you can say government is only responsible for law and order, defense, and if something goes wrong, then only government should come into picture. Minimum government type of a belief was present. So government expenditure was very low. At this point, you can say Keynes comes and he says that right now we don't have any other choice, we should increase government spending. And yeah.
Bailout package is also part of that government spending.
Bailout for banks, you can say it is also government spending, but this is not the same. Usually when government spending happens during a depression or recession, where does it happen? Imagine post-COVID recession in India, where did we try to spend more money? In infrastructure development and development of assets in the country. Why do we develop infrastructure using the money? Because like yesterday we saw, it creates a multiplier effect on the economy. Yesterday we saw when we invest 1 rupee in infrastructure, 15 rupees comes back into the economy over a period of time. The best type of investment that can happen during this sort of recession or you can say depression is if we spend more money on infrastructure. So US started focusing on spending more and more and more until when US started spending, it focused on infrastructure. They built roads, 7-layer roads, 5-layer roads which will stay for 100 years. And they built the largest dams you can say for 100 years. That means probably recent dam that China has built on Brahmaputra is the, you can say, dam which beat the size of those dams which were built about 80-90 years ago. That means for 80 years, 90 years, nobody had built that kind of dams. You can see that railways, roads, dams, airports that they built during that time, they were, you can say, world-class infrastructure. So when they spend so much money in building all this infrastructure, where is all the money going? Ultimately it will go to cement factories, steel factories, and you can say these factories will finally buy some raw materials from others, finally it will go to some labor, and they will, once money comes into the hands of people, what happens to demand? Demand increases. Once demand increases, we have virtuous cycle. Slowly this virtuous cycle started. Once people had enough money, they started buying these cars. Once people started buying these cars, this car manufacturing company started slowly producing a little more cars, and that is how you can say US came out of this Great Depression. This is what we call as demand side economics, Keynesian macroeconomics, New Deal macroeconomics, all are referring to the same thing. That means since 1929 until today, A couple of times we tried to go back to supply side economics in some countries like Greece, and this created even bigger problems. So we realized that is no longer working, and today most of the countries actually, whenever they have any problem, they always go for the same Keynesian macroeconomics. It has become a regular feature in, you can say, macroeconomic policy. Most of the countries are actually using this sort of same Keynesian economics now also. Abenomics. When Shinzo Abe was recently killed, he was prime minister in Japan. Yeah, so Shinzo Abe. So this person used the same mechanism. Quantitative easing in US and Europe. Quantitative easing, quantity of money supply is eased. Eased means increased by printing a little more currency. In US and Europe in 2008 and 2012 recessions. 2008 is called Lehman Brothers and 2012 is called Pigs crisis. Pigs is Portugal, Italy, Greece and Spain. This is the double dip recession. To come out of double dip recession, in fact most of the world used the same type of mechanism, that is printed more money. To come out of COVID induced recession, right now they are also doing the same thing. Indian government is also doing the same thing. So that means you can see we have all printed a little bit of extra money. This is what we call pump priming. Why is it called pump priming? Pump priming is coming from automobile engineering. Even before that, pump means, you might have seen hand pumps. If you push this hand pump, water comes out in villages. If there is a blockage in this hand pump, people bring a bucket of water and pour into that hand pump, so that this blockage, when water flows fast, the blockage is removed. So similarly, when government has a blockage in this virtuous cycle, government will pour some money into the economy so that more money comes out of the economy later. So this is how it came up. Later in automobile engineering, same thing. If petrol is not coming out of engine, we will pour some, you can say, petrol is not coming out of that particular filter or something, they will pour some petrol or something. This is same type of logic where you can say they will do pump priming. This is expansionary fiscal policy is normal times, and slightly if it goes to extraordinary type of recession, we go for pump priming. Then contractionary we already saw, high taxes, low spending. To combat inflation, usually we go for this contractionary policy. Combating inflation primarily is actually responsibility of RBI, but if RBI is unable to do it, RBI will be able to do only demand side inflation it can control, because RBI can only control money supply. Using money supply we can only control demand, and supply side inflation usually is controlled by government by, you can say, high taxes, low spending. This is demand side, but supply side also it will control, that is through giving subsidies. We already saw when oil becomes costly, government gives subsidies. When anything becomes too costly, government will subsidize it and reduce the prices and reduce inflation. And it will take decisions sometimes to remove customs duties so that it will become cheaper, all whatever we saw earlier to reduce inflation. We may sometimes ban exports or import onions if they are become too costly, import them from Bangladesh, Sri Lanka and increase the supply in India. All these are, you can say, fiscal policy measures, supply side. You understood this. Coming to budget. In India there is no word called budget anywhere in the constitution, there is only annual financial statement in article 112. So budget is actually, it means suitcase. When people used to earlier, Boget is actually the word which means suitcase. Finance minister used to bring the documents in suitcase. But nowadays Nirmala Sitharaman is bringing in some red bag, so this budget is no longer suitable also for India. Annual financial statement is more suitable for India, but it is in common parlance, it is in usage. So this is called annual financial statement. It will have, you can say, showing estimates of revenue and expenditure. Revenue means what? Revenue means how much money is coming to government. Expenditure means how much government is spending, that is expenditure. Budget gives complete picture of estimated receipts, expenditure of government of India for that year. So usually documents mandated by the constitution in the budget, what will be present if you see annual financial statement, that means this contains three numbers. One is, budget is always for which year? The coming year. Estimates for the coming year. Right now this year has not yet ended. So that means last year we had given estimates for this year. This year we can have, we cannot have actual numbers because the year is not over. So what we will have is revised estimates of current year, and all last year is already over. For last year we have actuals. So three set of numbers will be present in every budget. Estimates for the coming year, revised estimates for the running year and actuals of the previous year. And these three set of numbers will be there for all the three accounts: Consolidated Fund of India, Contingency Fund of India and Public Account of India. Most of the money of government actually goes through Consolidated Fund of India only. Contingency fund is, you can say, only for exceptional situations, and it will be there under finance secretary. They can spend this money whenever they feel that we have to use this money, and they don't need to take permission when they spend the money, but after they spend the money to refill this contingency fund of India again for next year, at that time they have to give an explanation on why they have spent this money. So that is contingency. Public account of India usually contain other liabilities of government. If you remember, we discussed about small savings fund. Can you give example of any small savings fund? Kisan Vikas Patra we saw. Recently they have created one more small savings fund. These type of small savings funds are all government taking loans directly from people. All these type of you can say small savings funds money, they will come into public account of India. Even India Post, in that recurring deposit, fixed deposit, whatever money you put in, that will all come into public account of India. They are mostly liabilities. Why we are calling them as liabilities? They are called liabilities because they have to be ultimately paid back to people with interest, and that is why you can say they are losing, government is losing money because they have this liability, and that is why they are, you can say, liabilities. Someone is saying voice is not clear. If you can tell me what is the issue, is it breaking or volume is low or something, then maybe I can, maybe somebody can do something about it. So coming to second, demands for grants. So actually how this budget process happens, I'll try to brief it a bit. Usually before in parliament you would have seen basically Nirmala Sitharaman coming and discussing about this budget. 6 months before that actually all the ministries and departments are given some forms to fill up how much money they are going to spend, where they are going to spend this money. Last year how much money did they spend, this year how much extra do they want. These things are filled up in forms, and these forms are then given to the finance ministry, because finance ministry has asked them how much money they want. But they would have imagined this year's budget is 45 lakh crore. But if you ask them how much money you want, obviously they will say we want more money. It would all come down to much more, 80 lakh, 70, 80 lakh crore. So finance ministry will do some pruning, it will remove all the unnecessary requirements whatever they have asked, and they will come down to 45 lakh crore. By discussing with the cabinet and prime minister, they will identify what are the major priorities of government and choose only those things. Then after this, you can this whatever they are requesting which are approved, these are called as demands for grants. In the name itself it is present. They are demanding this much of grant of money from who? Executive is demanding from legislature. So this is the meaning of demands for grants. So that is, you can say, this demands for grants. Estimates of expenditures are presented to Lok Sabha in the form of demands for grants. In Article 113 we have demands for grants. Then after this, you can say this whole budget process, once it is done, then you can say finance minister will bring this speech, along with the demands for grants also. Demands for grants are brought in big red green bags in 3 trucks, and they are parked in front of parliament. Usually anybody can, MPs can open it. Usually they don't open it, but it is possible if they want they can open and see. Then you can say finance minister will give her speech. Once the speech is over, you might have studied in polity. Immediately after budget speech is over, detailed discussion of budget is not allowed, but they can generally discuss about the budget. General discussion always after every budget there is same comment. This budget is anti-farmer, anti-poor or something. It doesn't matter who the, you can say, ruling party, opposition party, they will give same thing. So after this is over, then they will pass demands for grants. Demands for grants are passed as a resolution. What is the meaning of a resolution? Opinion of the House. Demands for grants are just put in so that opinion of the House with regard to each of the demands for grants can be gathered. And through simple majority they have to pass each of this through as a resolution, as an opinion. Usually they will take up only 5 or 6 demands for grants which are somewhat politically sensitive, where there is a disagreement, and they are discussed. And remaining thing are all gullitioned. You would have studied in polity. Gullition means everything is put to vote at once. Remaining all demands for grants are passed through simple majority. But if you have seen parliament budget speech, they will say anybody who is in favor who will say aye, and anybody who is against they will say nay.
Words are overlapping with each other.
Okay.
Little bit slow, because
Okay.
this may be the problem that the children are saying.
Oh, okay. They are saying it is clear actually, but I'll slow down a bit. If you are not able to get it, it is fine. So gullition, this part actually I am just trying to link it back to polity so that you will get an overall holistic perspective. So Gulation means all the demands for grants are passed at once. There is no further discussion about all these things. Once gulation is over, then appropriation bill and finance bill are brought in. Appropriation means what? Spending money for appropriate purposes. Appropriation means there is one major difference between a household budget and a government budget. Government, how it budgets is, it will think about where to spend the money first, whereas household is thinking about how much money we are getting. If a person is getting a salary of 1 lakh rupees, this household is thinking, okay, this 1 lakh, how to divide it between all the necessities. Whereas government will not think like this. First it will decide we are going to spend 45 lakh crores this year, and then they will think about where to get this 45 lakh crores. You understood? This is a major difference. So because the government first thinks about how to spend money, then that means appropriation bill is always passed first, and after that finance bill is passed. These are money bills. Everybody knows what is a money bill. Money bill means it will have only money component, and president will recommend it to Lok Sabha. And then who is declaring it as a money bill? Speaker has to declare it as a money bill, and in a money bill you can say Lok Sabha has more powers compared to Rajya Sabha, and normally first reading, second reading, third reading of the bill has to happen. During first reading they will only read the title and general description of the bill. Second reading, clause by clause, you can say reading and discussion will happen, and clause by clause voting also may happen. But nowadays they are not doing all this in detail. It will go in a fast track type of manner. And third reading is actually when they vote for the entire bill put together. And money bills, one more aspect, important aspect of a money bill is if it is not passed, then the government, you can say, has to resign. Because of this reason, anti-defection law is taken very seriously in case of money bills. That means both parties, they will say all MPs have to be present and they have to vote. If they don't vote, then there is a possibility of disqualification under anti-defection law. There is a party whip on both parties. Party whip will say you have to vote for this, and the one whatever Amit Shah is party whip, he will say I will say aye, everybody say aye, and that is what will happen. Finally, you can say the bill is passed. Appropriation bill is passed. Finance bill is passed in Lok Sabha. Rajya Sabha does not have the same powers with regard to money bill. Maybe they can delay it a bit, then finally it will go to president. And once president goes, president signs it, then the budget process is done. And president's signature is actually the point where money is available for executive to spend. Until then the permission is not available for executive to spend this money. If they do it, it is illegal. You understand? So this is the process of the budget. And appropriation bill, finance bill, now you can understand. Appropriation bill means it is talking about expenditure. First, where money, how much money, where money should be spent. Stipulates no amount can be withdrawn from the consolidated fund of India without enactment of a law by parliament. So here we are passing this law so that parliament will give permission so that money can be withdrawn for expenditure. Then finance bill, article 110A, it is presented to enact a law for imposition, abolition, remission, alteration, regulation of taxes. Any new tax that need to be created, old tax that need to be changed, everything will come under this finance bill. It is a money bill as defined in article 110. So here without the approval of parliament, it is not possible to change taxes or create new taxes. There was a question once in prelims, no taxation without representation, that is in American Revolution. Where is it present in Indian Constitution? It is this article. No taxation without representation means representation is there in India in which political institution? In legislature, in parliament. So that means you can see our representatives are in parliament. Without them approving a new tax, the executive cannot tax people. This is the meaning of no taxation without representation. They will discuss about whether this tax is rational, whether it should be imposed or not, and then if they approve it and then they pass the bill, then only you can say taxation is possible. So this is finance bill. Then coming to structure of
So budget, when it is introduced, till the budget is passed, so let's say there is a 10 days or 2 weeks kind of whole process. So in those 2 weeks, cannot the government, the executive which is there in power, they cannot even remove anything or any money from the consolidated fund of India.
This budget is for coming year, right? Whichever is running right now, that permission is already taken last year. So that means the budget will be over before April 1st. April 1st is the beginning of financial year. By then everything should have been passed. So right now this is how it is running. So that means there is no problem to run the government currently.
Can you please explain it once again, demand for grants and how
Okay, in the budget actually three things will happen. First, demands for grants need to be passed through a resolution because it is not a bill, it is only opinion of the house. After that, there is appropriation bill. Appropriation bill we saw, it is a money bill, there is a first reading, second reading, third reading of the bill and they will pass in Lok Sabha, then it will go to Rajya Sabha, same thing. Then after that there is finance bill. Finance bill means where will we get the money, how will we raise the money, any taxes, new taxes, change of old taxes. So this is the order in which they will go through, you can say, the budget.
So we can say that the money is actually drawn from appropriation bill only, and demand of grant is just the statement of what is in the appropriation bill.
Yeah. So based on demands for grants, appropriation bill is created. Bill is actually the, you can say, actual budget. Demand for grants are only there as a tool for discussion and debate. Demand for grants, ideally what they have to do is they should discuss it in the parliament, but most of the demands for grants are only discussed in department related standing committees. You would have studied in polity, there are DRSs, they would have divided it,
Like distribution.
they will, correct. They will distribute all this to department related standing committees and only they will discuss it. Finally, they will give a report, we have approved it, and they will gullish on it. So, coming to structure of the budget. The budget consists of two parts. Receipts is how much money government is receiving. Expenditure is how much money government is spending. So, within this, receipts we have revenue and capital receipts. You can make it into some sort of a tree so that you can say, you will get clarity of this whole thing at one place. Revenue receipts means, basically between revenue and capital, there is one big difference. If capital means whenever we sell some asset, imagine from the perspective of a person, asset maybe you own some land. When you own land and you sell it, you get a lump sum amount into your account, then that is a capital receipt. If you don't sell any asset, imagine you take a loan from a bank. When you take a loan from a bank also, your liability has increased. Is loan a liability or not? Loan for you is for the bank, yes, it is an asset. If you are taking a loan, it may be a liability for you because you have to pay, you can say, interest. Imagine you take a loan and you get that lump sum amount of money. Imagine you take 1 crore loan and it will come into your account. That is a liability. That lump sum amount that you get either by selling assets or creating liabilities is called as capital receipt. Whenever government does disinvestment, sell shares, that should come where? It is selling assets or not? Shares that are owned by government is sale of asset. If you sell a disinvestment, that is capital receipt. Imagine government sells its land, that is also capital receipt. So, if government has taken a loan from World Bank, also capital receipt because liability is created. If it has to be capital receipt, either asset should be reduced or liability should be increased. Then only we call it as capital receipt. Imagine none of these have happened. Government is just earning profit from whatever it has invested in PSUs. Then that is not capital receipt because it is not affecting asset liabilities. Then it will be called as revenue receipt. So revenue receipt is current income receipt from all sources. Imagine government is collecting normal taxes from people every year regular. That is revenue. Profits of public enterprises, grants. Earlier central government used to take grants from other countries. That is also revenue. Right now state governments may take grant from center. For state government that is revenue receipt. So revenue receipts neither create any liability nor any cause any reduction in assets of the government. How do you differentiate between revenue receipt, capital receipt? It is very simple. If they have an impact on assets liabilities, then it is capital receipt. If they don't have any impact on assets liabilities, then it is revenue receipt. If a PSU is underperforming, imagine it is making losses. If it is making losses, we are not getting anything from it. So there is no receipt. Imagine if it is making losses, we have to spend some money just to keep it afloat. That will, first of all, it will not come under receipt, it will come under expenditure. But expenditure also you can by now estimate, think what kind of expenditure would it be? If we give that money to that, you can say, company just to keep it afloat, we are not increasing our assets. We are just using it for survival. That is revenue receipt. Maintenance function is revenue receipt. You understood this? I mean, that is revenue expenditure. Correct. Revenue expenditure. Under revenue receipts, so we can further subdivide it into non-tax revenue and tax revenue. Tax revenue is very simple. either we impose direct tax, indirect tax, we will see some taxes later. Tax means it is compulsory contribution to government. In tax there is no voluntary tax. It means once tax is imposed by government we have to pay it. We cannot say I don't want to pay tax. It is mandatory for everybody to pay tax. Then non-tax revenue. Under non-tax revenue we have split into two, commercial and administrative revenue. Commercial revenue means wherever there is a buyer-seller relationship between government and people, it is commercial revenue. Imagine you buy a bus ticket, railway ticket. Earlier when Air India was under government air ticket, whatever is owned by government is, if it is selling some sort of commercial goods or services, that is commercial revenue. In some cases, government is actually, if there should be proportionate payment, that means the product that you are buying, if you are paying market price, then only it is called commercial revenue. Imagine you are not paying market price, government has kept token 1 rupee for 1 kg grain. That is not commercial revenue. You understood this? So commercial means we have to be able to establish a commercial relationship as if they are like a market player, they are selling in market price. You understood this? So you can see it is received by government in the form of prices paid by people for goods and services that government provides, like electricity, railways, postal stamps, toll that the government collects on road. Everything where you are buying a service from government is all commercial revenue. Administrative revenue means it is not exactly, you cannot exactly establish a, you can say, buyer-seller relationship. It is slightly difficult to differentiate between the two. So government itself has differentiated what we consider as administrative revenue. Some of them are simple to differentiate where there is no buyer-seller relation. Imagine you are not wearing helmet and you have to pay fine. That is not commercial, it is administrative revenue. Or you pay some passport fee, etc. That is fines and penalties, then passport fee, court fee. You are just paying some fee to the court, it doesn't mean you are buying something from the court. So similarly, hospital fee and education fee also government is not considering it exactly as commercial, because the value of the service that they are providing is much higher than what they are collecting from people. There is no proportionality between how much they are collecting from people and how much service they are providing. So this is, you can say, administrative revenue. Commercial revenue, administrative revenue are two types of revenue under, you can say, this revenue receipts, I mean non-tax revenue. Then coming to capital receipts. Capital receipt means there has to be, you can say, either sale of assets or creation of liabilities. Okay, someone is asking about public account once. Okay, public account means apart from consolidated fund of India, contingency fund of India, public account of India will contain other liabilities of government. Liabilities like small savings instruments where Kisan Vikas Patra, Sukanya Samruddhi Yojana, where government has actually bought some, I mean taken some loans from poorer sections of society. This part we saw in earlier classes. What is the small savings instrument? Where government directly takes loans from people, and that means bonds have been given to people. Kisan Vikas Patra bond is given, and after a certain amount of time the bond will mature and the people will go and try to take out the money. So where is this money kept by government? It is kept as a liability in, you can say, this public account of India. This is how public account of India operates. So coming to public debt. Public debt is one type of capital receipt. Debt means when we take a loan, what happens to our liabilities? Government, when it takes a loan, its liability will increase, that is public debt. What is the objective? Why are we doing it? To bridge the budget deficit. Like I said, sometimes government will spend more money than that is earning. Earlier we saw inflationary gap. Whenever we are in some sort of a slowdown or recession or vicious cycle, we will try to push a little more money into the economy by taking a loan. So that is one reason, that is basically bridging the, financing the deficit means we are taking a loan and spending extra money to fight against depression. So when some sort of a depression is present in the economy, government has to help get out of this recession. We just saw pump priming, then they have to spend more money. If you have to spend, what type of policy is it? It is expansionary policy. Expansionary policy means what should happen to expenditure? Expenditure should increase. What should happen to taxes? Taxes should reduce, expenditure should increase. Then where will we get the money if we cannot tax people? The only option available is loan. Whenever we go for expansionary policy, loans are imperative. They become mandatory because we don't have any other choice here. So that means expansionary monetary policy automatically means more public debt. So to fight against depression, slowdown, recession, to check inflation. Sometimes it can be used to check inflation, it is not always done. How we can use it to check inflation? Usually RBI is asked to take a loan, this part we have seen, on behalf of government. RBI will take this loan, but if government does not spend this money is kept aside, then what has happened to money supply in the economy? It reduces. So this is what they did in market stabilization scheme during demonetization. So they felt there is too much money, you can say, that is coming into the banks, and banks, when huge amount of money comes into the banks, what is this money a liability or an asset for the bank? This is a deposit. So deposit means it is a liability for the bank. This liability, if they have to offload this liability, they will try to give more loans. If every bank tries to give so many loans, then loan interest rates will crash. So government felt a better way would be to, if we should not affect the economy, let us take this money as a loan. Under market stabilization scheme, new bonds were issued to the bank, and all this money was taken as loan by government, but government did not spend the money. RBI just kept it in a separate account. This way we have removed all this money from the economy, and we have been able to control inflation by, you can say, preventing crashing of loan interest rates and consequent inflation. So this way we can do it if we want, but normally in regular situations it is not done. In extraordinary situations it is possible to do it. Financing economic development is very simple. We will take loans and we will invest in the economy. Just like how a business will take loans and invest in the economy. Imagine business is, as of now they have invested 1 crore, they are able to earn 30 lakh per month, per year as, you can say, profit, 30% profit they are making. If they take a loan and invest another 1 crore investment, then they will make 60 lakh because their business is already making 30% profit. But the loan interest rate is only 10%. Is it profitable for this business to take a loan or not? Loan interest rate is 10%. If they take 1 crore loan, how much will they pay? 10 lakh. But how much will they earn extra? 30 lakh. That means, is it profitable or not? Yes. That means this business will take this loan. Exactly same thing, government will take a loan and it will spend it in the economy. As government spends it in the economy, demand production will increase. As production increases, tax collection will increase. Tax collection can be seen as if it is some sort of a profit for government. As tax collection increases, using the tax collection they will pay back loan, and still extra money will be remaining with government. You understood? So they finance economic development on one side, and it is good for government also on the other side. So that is why every year actually government takes loans and they will invest a bit in the economy so that they will earn extra taxes next year. Unforeseen contingencies is very simple. If just to ensure, imagine during COVID, we will take a loan and try to address this by taking loan we can make sure that somehow we give free vaccination to everybody, or when there is a disaster, Bhuj earthquake or some other Assam floods or something, sometimes we take a loan to address this particular situation. Alternate source of income and taxable capacity is reached. Earlier we have seen Laffer curve, that means beyond a certain point we cannot tax people. Because we cannot tax people, the only another option available is take a loan immediately. Later we can pay back the loan. Financing wars. War bonds are usually issued by every government whenever a war starts. That is also a loan taken, you can say, from people. Financing public enterprises. For this, that means whenever extra capital is required for public enterprises for their expansion, their investment, then also government can take loan. Carrying out welfare programs. This part is very simple. They will take loans and they will invest it in, you can say, MNREGA, PDS scheme, etc. Creating infrastructure, productive assets. So between these two there is a concept here. Creating infrastructure will create long-term impact, positive impact on the economy. But welfare schemes, they will not create that kind of a long-term impact. They will create a short-term welfare type of impact. Between Amartya Sen and Jagdish Bhagwati, there was a big debate with regard to where we should spend more money. Sen versus Bhagwati debate. So in this debate, Amartya Sen says that we should use all entire money on welfare programs, and Bhagwati Sen said we should use it on infrastructure and, you can say, increasing our capability to produce more wealth next year. So in this debate, basically government has taken a middle path, somewhat 50-50, we divide it. May not be exactly 50-50. NDA government is more leaning towards Bhagwati, UPA government is more leaning towards Amartya Sen, 60-40 or something, you can think of it like this. So this is the present situation. You understood this? Imagine Amartya Sen is they are talking about, there was an old English saying, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, that is welfare. But if you teach him fishing, you feed him for lifetime, and that is this infrastructure and such. But Amartya Sen says, you cannot teach hungry man fishing, he is not going to learn anything. That means we need to find a balance. First you feed him and then we focus on teaching also. This is the present situation that we are doing. You understood? Creation of productive assets. Productive asset means productive asset is bigger than infrastructure. It will include intellectual property or anything else which is, you can say, in the long run productive for the economy. For that also we take loans. So this is all, you can say, all the reasons why we are taking loans in the economy. So domestic borrowing means you can by now think what is domestic borrowing, what is external borrowing. Domestic means within the country. By issuing securities, government securities and treasury bills, people directly, you can say, that they will give this loan, and even small savings schemes, deposit schemes also, provident fund, small savings schemes, national savings schemes, all these type of things also are all domestic borrowing only. And external borrowing means if we take a loan from outside, it could be international agencies like IMF, World Bank, or even countries also. We may take a loan from Japan or we may take a loan from USA, UK. That is also external borrowing. So this so far whatever we have seen, all these are loans and they are all, you can say, capital receipts. Because they are increasing liabilities, we are calling them as capital receipt. External commercial borrowing. External commercial borrowing is not actually related to government. Commercial means what? Yes, commercial means who is taking the loan? Private sector is taking the loan. So it will not come into the finances of government. Yes, it is an external loan for the country, that is true, but it is not for the government. So it will impose a liability for RBI to have enough dollar to pay back. So that is why we are considering it. If it is masala loan, no, it is not about dollar, but at least you can say if you take an external loan, normal external loan, then private sector is taking this external loan, then we call it as external commercial borrowing. That is different. FDI means that is investment into shares. Loans, we are talking about loans here. That means only taking loans from outside the country. Correct. Non-sovereign means they are not taken by government. So we will not usually talk about it in budget because it is not exactly related to government's finances. So recovery of loans. Imagine union government actually has given loan to some Assam government or something, and later Assam government now pays back this loan to union government. When it pays back this loan, the receipt that this union government gets, what type of receipt will it be? It is capital receipt. Why is it capital receipt? Okay, right now imagine a principal is being paid back. Then it is capital receipt. This loan, when union government had given it to Assam government, for union government what is it? It is an asset or a liability? It is an asset. Now the asset has been reduced because the asset has changed when the loan has come back. You can say assets have reduced for union government, that means it is capital receipt. You understood? Imagine Assam government is paying monthly interest to union government. Then asset is not changing, liabilities are not changing, then what type of receipt is it? It is revenue receipt. Loans recovered by the central government from states and local governments are capital receipts in the budget because recovery of loans reduces assets. So next, so far we have seen about loans. When we take loans from someone or our loans are recovered, they are capital receipts. Next, disinvestment. Disinvestment means usually when we sell anything which is an asset of government, it is called disinvestment. Mostly our disinvestment right now is happening in shares, selling of PSU shares. But broadly, if government sells its land or any other asset that it owns, then also you can call it disinvestment. As of now, most of the disinvestment that happens is only shares. That is why logically we only consider CPSEs, that means central public sector enterprises are being sold, that is what is disinvestment. It has been mobilizing financial resources since 1991. Selling of shares of public sector undertakings by government is known as disinvestment. So here we have just looked at what is disinvestment. Right now what is the status of disinvestment, this part we will see later. Now coming to, so far we have seen receipts, that means how money is coming to government. Next is expenditure, where the money is going. Capital expenditure, revenue expenditure, by now you can understand probably what would be the difference between them. If it is changing assets liabilities, then which one would it be? It is capital. So capital means when we are spending money and buying an asset, then that is capital expenditure. Or when we are spending money and paying back an old loan, that means we are reducing liabilities, that is also capital expenditure. So when government incurs expenditure to create assets, imagine building schools and hospitals, roads, bridges, canals, railways, these are all assets that are being built for a country, then you can say that is capital expenditure. Or sometimes we reduce liability, repayment of a loan, then also it is capital expenditure. Revenue expenditure, by now you can think by yourself, it is regular recurring type of expenditure which neither has any impact on assets or liabilities. Salary is given to employees, regular maintenance of existing assets. Right now there is a dam and we have to maintain this dam. School, college, hospital, we are trying to focus on maintenance of these assets already. Road, potholes are there, we are trying to maintain it. So that means that is all revenue expenditure. Expenditure that neither creates asset nor reduces liability. Such expenditure is known as revenue expenditure. Example, payment of salaries to government employees, maintenance of property, free education, health services to people, even whatever we are giving as welfare schemes, that is also revenue expenditure because it is not creating assets, it is not reducing liabilities, that is why it is revenue expenditure.
So payment of interest on loans taken will be counted in revenue expenditure?
Yes, payment of interest, it is not changing our liabilities or assets, still the liability is still there, only when we pay our principal liability will reduce. So when we pay interest, that will be revenue expenditure. So these are all, you can say, this is basically the structure of the budget, expenditure and revenue. Coming to types of budgets, there is balanced budget, surplus budget and deficit budget. Balanced means government actually is getting 100 rupees and spending 100 rupees back in the economy, then it is called balanced budget. Whatever it is spending through appropriation, it is getting from economy. You can now estimate, that means think what it is actually to think about surplus budget. Surplus means government is in surplus. Imagine it will actually raise 1 or 2 rupees from economy but will only spend 100 rupees. That means 2 rupees surplus to government. This is called surplus budget. What will be the impact of an economy if we do surplus budget? What happens to money? Money supply reduces. We have taken 2 rupees out of the economy. When money supply decreases, what happens to demand? Demand decreases. Demand decreases and a vicious cycle is created. We will do this only usually in extraordinary circumstances when inflation has gone out of control and somehow we want to reduce it. Only then we do it. Otherwise surplus budget nobody will do it. So one other situation when we do it is when we have taken a loan from someone and we have to pay it back. At that time this 2 rupees is used to pay back to some other country. Then also it is possible. You understood? Greece did this sort of a surplus budget to pay back loans given by Germany. And this created even, you can say, worse situation in Greece because of vicious cycle that is created. In PIGS crisis, G is Greece, and that is, you can say, the problem that Greece faced. You understood this? Then deficit budget. Deficit means we are basically 100 rupees we have collected and 1 or 2 rupees we have spent. Extra 2 rupees we have spent, that means government is in -2, it has taken a loan and then it has spent this money. Then government is in deficit, it is called as deficit budget. When we spend extra 2 rupees, next year what happens is extra money in the economy will create more demand. Is because of more demand, more production, more employment. As production increases, what happens to production taxes? Product taxes, production taxes, you can say production taxes are same, but product taxes on extra products that we have produced, GST and such, whatever we have collected, it will be more or not. That means extra GST if it is collected, imagine this year 2 rupees extra we have spent, next year we will get 3 rupees back. That means it is worth spending this extra 2 rupees. You understood this? So that means government is going to get back the money next year anyway, that is why they are spending a little more money. How recovery of loan reduces assets? Loan, if you have given a loan to someone, this loan is making you money or not, then it is an asset for you. When that person pays back the loan to you, then that asset has reduced because you will no longer get any interest from that loan. That is where recovery of loan reduces assets. For a person, company, government, it is still same. Yeah.
Interest received is an asset for us now.
Interest received is like a revenue receipt only because it is not changing assets liability. So it is a regular type of money that we will receive. Interest is just cash coming in. Asset means right now what is asset? Something which generates money consistently for us can be asset. You can spend this money to create an asset. You understood this? So most of the countries, because this is not a good idea, and this also earlier, before Keynes came into picture, demand side economics came into picture, situation used to be like this. All countries went for balanced budgets. But after Keynes, and especially after the year 2000, most of the countries actually are going for deficit budget. Unless there is some extraordinary situation in the economy where they have to pay back a loan or high inflation or something, majority of the time, majority of the countries, majority of states, everybody goes for a deficit budget. Deficit budget means government always spends a little more than what it is taking out of the economy. As it pushes a little more cash into the economy, demand increases and economy is pushed into more stronger virtuous cycle. Because virtuous cycle means more production, more employment, and that is what government wants, more growth. You understood?
Can there be a situation where the surplus budget can be the reason of creating inflation?
Yes, this surplus, okay, deficit budget can be the reason.
But can there be a situation when surplus budget can be the reason for
Surplus budget cannot, you can say demand actually is going to reduce. So it cannot create demand side inflation, at least it cannot create. Supply side is not independent of this, so you can say it will not surplus budget will not create inflation. Deficit budget will create. In a socialist economy also, surplus means government is taking out money. Government is in surplus.
Government is also in the business of manufacturing for industries, so they might be reducing the manufacturing capacity or
Okay, that is different. When we are looking at government budget, we are considering government to be separate from all the PSUs. PSUs are all, we may give support to these PSUs, those are separate entities. So only government we are looking at. Most countries today have deficit budgets. Government spending is focused on increasing growth because we want to increase growth, and this deficit budget helps increase revenue next year because we have spent and demand increases. That is why we are spending more on deficit budget. So what is the advantage of this deficit budget? We already saw it increases aggregate demand. People have more money on their hands, it increases aggregate demand, economic growth. It makes use of surplus saving in recession. Imagine we are in a recessionary situation. Imagine you have a lot of money in recessionary situation. You want to save this money. In recession, there is no easy way to invest money in any one particular entity. Everything, stock market is going down, you don't know where to put it. What is the safest way to invest a lot of money? Buying government securities. When we buy government securities, we are sure that government will always pay back the money, first thing. Second, interest rate may not be high, but at least we are guaranteed that our money will be safe. You understood? Because of this reason, whenever there is a recession, what will government try to do? What type of policy? Expansionary fiscal policy. To go for expansionary fiscal policy, we already know that government cannot, you can say, increase taxes. Government has to reduce taxes, that means tax has reduced, and expenditure has to increase. If expenditure has to increase, it has to take a loan from someone else. And if it has to take a loan, people are they interested to give a loan? Yes, because in recession they don't know where else to invest. Best saving is actually giving it to government. At this point, government wants to take this loan and people want to give this loan to government. And that means this is acting as if it is some sort of automatic stabilization of economy. People are themselves coming and giving loan to government, and they are requesting government to take this loan, and government also wants to take this. By taking it and investing it in the economy, we are going for expansion. So government is not changing the policy in any manner with regard to loans. That is why it is called as automatic stabilizer in the economy. You understood this? On both sides, both it is good for the person who is giving this loan and government who is taking this loan. It is making use of surplus saving, means people who have extra money, they are all giving loan to government. Then financing public sector investment, this is very simple. Government will spend extra, you can see in expansionary fiscal policy, it will spend a little more money. Investment means maybe it goes into welfare or infrastructure or something. But there are also some problems. When we take too much loans, what happens to our total debt? It keeps increasing. As our total debt increases, we also have to pay higher interest every year or not? Who will give this? Finally, how will government get the money? It has to tax someone and then pay back. So that is one problem. Then, if we are taking too much of loan, at some point we have to pay back the principal. Imagine we take a 30-year loan, then it is a very long-term loan. We may not pay back, by then probably we will be retired. Then our future generations, they will have to pay this loan. That means we are imposing a burden on future generations. So this is intergenerational equity in a country with regard to finance. Usually intergenerational equity is spoken about in sustainability, sustainable development, but in financial aspect, in economy aspect, intergenerational equity means this sort of taking too much loans will lead to compromise on intergenerational equity. You understood? Because when we take a long term very large loan, who will be impacted? Future generations will be impacted. This actually has happened in USA. US went for war after war after war, and every time they issue war bonds, you can say their loans kept on increasing. And right now, I think during Obama era, they were calling it as fiscal cliff. Again during Trump era and now Biden era, what they are doing is the loan kept on increasing, but they did not actually pay back the loan, because if they pay back the loan, where will the money come from? They will have to tax people. When they tax people this much, what type of cycle is going to be created in economy? It is going to create a vicious. They are right now in some sort of a situation where they will not be able to pay back the loan without creating a severe vicious cycle which creates depression in the economy. You understand? So what they are doing is they are just perpetually postponing this loan. That means they keep on taking a new loan to pay back old loan. Taking a new loan to pay back old loan is called as rollover in fiscal policy. Rollover of loans means government takes imagine 10-year loan for 10 crores. It will take a new 10 crore loan after 10 years and pay back those old people. And that means the loan keeps on, you can say, perpetuating. This is what US government is doing. Because if they try to pay back a loan, they will fall off a cliff. This is what is called as fiscal cliff. You understood? And fiscal cliff, you can say it has created this sort of future tax rises or spending cuts or not. At some point they have to give back, and that means you can see that future generations will pay it. This is violation of intergenerational equity. Then potential crowding out. Crowding out effect means, yesterday we saw what is savings rate. People have deposited money in the bank, that is what we call savings rate. What is investment rate? Some people or businesses have taken loans and invested in the economy along with foreign investment put together. That is called investment rate. This part we have seen. Savings rate of the economy is primarily pushing investment. That means majority of money is coming from where? Savings of people, savings of businesses. Somebody is saving money. Right. Imagine they are saving money in the bank. If government says I want loans and it will take a big chunk of this savings to government itself by selling government securities, then less money will be available to give as investment or not. When more money goes towards government, then less money is available in economy to be able to be used as investment. This is what we call as crowding out. Government borrowing is crowding out investment. Means because government is borrowing more money, we don't have infinite amount of money. Total savings in the economy, imagine, are 100 rupees. 60 rupees if they are taken by government, only 40 is remaining by private sector. Even if government takes only 25, only 75 is remaining. Whenever government in a recession tries to take more from 25 to 30, then less money is remaining for production. You understood this? This is called crowding out. Crowding out has two factors. First, less money is available itself directly, less amount of money is available. Because less amount of money is available, supply of loans has reduced. What about demand? Demand is same. If demand is same and supply of loans have reduced, what happens to interest rates? Interest rates will increase. Less loans are available, first thing. Second, interest rates of these loans are also high. This leads to less investment in the economy because too much loans have been taken by government. This is what we call as crowding out. Now you can tell me what is crowding in then. Exact opposite of this is crowding in. So when government tries to spend its own money so that investment in the economy will improve, that is called crowding in. How do we do it? Sometimes government will say I will guarantee the loans to this sector, MSME sector, you give more loans. Then bank will feel, okay, I can give more loans because government guarantee is there and more loans are given. That means investment is increasing or not. All these type of things that government does to increase investment in the economy is called as crowding in. You understood? So this potential means we are not saying every single time it leads to crowding out. Potential means there is a possibility that crowding out will happen when government takes too much loans. Then potential inflation. When government takes loans, what does it do with that money? Government spends the money. When it spends the money, money will come. Usually, money is given mostly by rich people and comes towards poor. And we saw what happens when money moves from rich to poor in the economy. Propensity to consume is high in poor. That means velocity of circulation is high. That means probability of inflation is high. We are not saying it will happen definitely. There is potential for inflation to happen. So may cause higher bond yields. I think we discussed about bond yields, right? Have we discussed bond yields?
Sir, should that be lower bond yields?
So bond yield means it is a slightly complex topic.
Because sir, it is going to be inversely related with the price, right? Price of the bond.
It depends upon actually demand for the bond. Demand for the bond and yield of the bond are inversely related. So as demand increases, yield decreases. It does not have always a proper relationship between interest rate, normal interest rate of the bond and yield of the bond. What is actually related is demand for the bond. So imagine bond yields are high means what? Demand for bonds is low. So what they are talking about when budget deficit means government has taken too much of loans. When they have taken too much of loans, they have issued more bonds or not? If they have issued more bonds, what happens to supply of bonds? As everybody, whoever is demanding bonds, they've all got bonds. Then what happens to
But sir, the
overall
demand must also have spiraled, right?
demand for bonds?
Demand for the bonds must have also have spiraled. And
Yes.
that in general spirals more than the supply.
That is a possibility, but we cannot say this will always happen. We are only talking about budget deficit. We are not saying that this is a recession situation. Every year is budget deficit. What you are saying is true in recession, but every year we have a budget deficit. And in a budget deficit, you can say we can be sure that more bonds will be released, but we cannot always be sure that demand for bonds will be very high. You understood this? So this is you can say these are all problems with regard to budget deficit. Any questions so far?
Could you please explain that automatic stabilizers point once again?
Okay. Budget deficit in a recession type of situation acts like an automatic stabilizer. Automatic stabilizer means government without doing anything much, no change, no big change. Still, people would want to give more loans to government because that is the safest alternative as investment. So more people will try to buy more bonds, and as people try to buy more bonds, if government issues bonds, then you can say money comes to government. Government also wanted the same thing. Without changing policy, automatically money coming towards government has increased. So that means now government will spend that money, go for expansionary policy. That is why we are saying automatic stabilizer. You understood this? So coming to types of deficits. So this is also an important type of question that has been asked earlier in prelims. Here I will take some sort of oversimplistic type of approach, take an example, because if this type of a question comes, we already know how the question comes. It means it is a very simple type of question. Each this type of deficit is what? Using the same example, whatever we are going to discuss, you can answer that type of question. So consider budget deficit. Take the same type of example. This is economy and this is government. If we are taking out 100 rupees and spending 1 or 2 rupees, then the government is in a budget deficit of 2 rupees. Extra money we are spending overall in the economy. Let us take this is for budget deficit means we have a 2 rupee deficit. This is what is budget deficit showing. You understood? So, take a same example for all the things. Imagine we are raising 92 rupees and spending 100 rupees. Same thing, but let us take it like this so that it is simple for others also. We are able to raise 98 rupees and we are spending 100 rupees. That means minus 2 is the budget. Total the deficit of the government is, you can say, minus 2. That means 2 rupees deficit. Now come to fiscal deficit. We will come back to this revenue deficit later. Fiscal deficit means overall, you can say, imagine we have been able to raise 90 rupees, spend 100 rupees in the economy. Budget deficit is 10 rupees in this case, in this example, whatever we took. If we are able to raise 90 rupees and spend, you can say spend 100 rupees. Imagine we printed 2 rupees. This is what we call as monetized deficit. That will come in the end. Imagine we cannot print unlimited money. We cannot print 10 rupees. If we print entire 10%, what would happen? It will create too much inflation. So we can't print that much. We print a little, imagine 2 rupees. Remaining 8 rupees we have to take as a loan. And when we take that much loan, 8 rupees, that loan is called as fiscal deficit. Every year, fiscal deficit will always show the same thing. How much loans have we taken this year? That is what fiscal deficit shows. Apart from other things, printing of currency or whatever is there, loans taken this year is the meaning of fiscal deficit. Mathematical formula will look like slightly different, but actual meaning is same. That means it is loans taken this year. Total expenditure minus total receipts excluding borrowings. Total expenditure is 100 rupees. Total receipts excluding borrowings. Total receipts means also everything put together is 100 rupees only. That is how they are actually calculating it. Minus borrowings means 8 rupees. Total receipt means they are considering it like this in the formula. 90 plus 2 plus 8. Out of that, remove this 8, that is excluding borrowing. Then you will get what? This 8 rupees. That is the loans taken this year. So this is basically fiscal difference between total expenditure, total revenue excluding borrowings of government is termed as fiscal deficit. It is indication of the total borrowings needed by the government. Every year whatever loans they take, this is called as fiscal deficit. If you remember, we discussed about stocks and flows. This fiscal deficit, this year how much loan we have taken? Is it a stock or flow of debt? This is current year how much loan we have taken, it means it is flow. Imagine the stock of debt that we have taken loans from last so many years, that we measure through debt to GDP ratio. You understood this? Stock of debt of a country is measured through debt to GDP ratio. Flow of debt is measured through fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit shows this year how much loans we have taken. Total loan of the country how much, that is shown by debt to GDP ratio. You understood this? So implications of fiscal deficit are same whatever we saw in budget deficit. Whenever we are taking a loan, what happens? Increase in debt. That means we have to pay interest. Foreign dependence. If we take a loan from outside, foreign dependence means why there is foreign dependence if we take a loan from outside? What will be the problem? They may impose conditions, correct. We may have to change policies. That means our sovereignty is affected. For example, China is giving loans to countries and it is asking give me your island or port or something. So this type of, you can say, violation of sovereignty will happen. If borrowed from outside, it can undermine the sovereignty of a country. That is second problem. Hampers future growth. This is intergenerational equity which we just discussed. If we take too much loans, like fiscal cliff in USA, this is what would happen. Then crowding out effect also we just discussed. When government takes too much loan, government borrows a significant chunk of savings leading to less money being available for private sector for investment. And increased borrowing by government leads to lower savings being available, increasing interest rates also. These are the two dimensions of crowding out effect. So these are basically the impact of too much fiscal deficit. Now come to revenue deficit. Revenue is a recurring type of income that we are talking about. Difference between revenue expenditure, revenue receipt. Imagine each month government is earning 10 rupees but spending 12 rupees. That means each month expenditure is 2 rupees more than whatever it is able to earn as receipt, normal tax and other such things. This 2 rupees, where will it usually come from? If government is unable to meet its expenditure needs, what will it do? It will borrow money. It will issue a small short-term loan, like a treasury bill or something. So then they will issue treasury bill, they will take a loan. All these loans are short-term loans. At the end of the year, if they have to pay back this loan, imagine 1 year loan they have taken, then what will they do? They will do rollover. That means they will take a long-term loan right now and pay back this short-term loan, and that will be added to fiscal deficit. This revenue deficit, where whatever is there monthly or something, it will keep on getting added to fiscal deficit. You understood this? So revenue deficit is the difference between revenue expenditure and revenue receipts, which indicates increase in liabilities of central government without increase in assets. Liabilities means because we are taking a loan to meet this 2 rupee need, is it an increase in liability or not? Yes. This is how government is usually doing it. That is why we are saying there is increase in liability. Effective revenue deficit has been, you can say, right now this is what happened. Then we realize that this is not a good idea because consistently it is overall increasing our, you can say, liabilities of the country, and it is deteriorating overall our balance sheet of the government because too many liabilities. So we felt that something has to be done about it, and government came up with a plan. It said that how to reduce revenue deficit is very simple. Anybody can identify how to reduce it. Either we have to reduce our expenditure, which is 12 rupees, or we have to increase our revenue, which is 10 rupees. We try to do both, and to reduce this unnecessary expenditure, we did an exercise of identifying what all is unnecessary, and in that we found too many subsidies, unnecessary subsidies we are giving, or loan waivers or some populist schemes or something they felt we should remove, and they removed some of them, and a little bit they reduced this revenue deficit. But while we were doing this analysis, we found that some things are actually good in this revenue expenditure. What are those good things? Center is giving some grants to state governments. States are actually using it to build assets. Assets means it should actually be what type of expenditure? It should be capital expenditure, but it is capital expenditure for state government, not for central government. For central government, no asset is built because it is an asset in the balance sheet of the state government. So that means you can see in central government it is not added into the assets list, and that means it will be classified under revenue expenditure. But we felt that anyway it is doing some good to the country and we should not reduce that part. Only the remaining part, whatever is not actually adding any assets to the country, that part should be reduced. So what we did was, from revenue deficit, we removed this grants given to states for creation of capital assets, and remaining part, whatever we get, is called as effective revenue deficit. You understood this? It has been prescribed by an amendment to the FRBM Act by Finance Act. Effective revenue deficit has been defined as the difference between revenue deficit and grants for creation of capital assets. That means whatever grant has been given by central government to create capital assets, that part is removed in the revenue deficit. Remaining part of revenue deficit has to be reduced. This is the meaning of effective revenue deficit. Imagine in that 2 rupees, 50 paisa is actually good because states are building capital assets with it. Only the remaining 1.5 rupees we should reduce. So that is the meaning of effective revenue deficit. You understood this? So problems related to revenue deficit. It indicates inability of government to meet regular recurring expenditure. Normal monthly expenditure itself it is unable to meet. It implies government that is using up savings of other sectors. If government is consistently taking loans, loan after loan after loan every month, then what is happening? Same crowding out effect is happening or not? More and more loans if it is taking for revenue expenditure itself. So that means you can see it is using up the savings of other sectors, crowding out effect. It implies government has to make up this deficit from capital receipts. That means either it has to take a loan, borrowing, or it has to sell some assets. That are the only options available. So it means revenue deficit either leads to increase in liability or reduction in assets. Both cases actually balance sheet of government will actually worsen. That means economic situation of government worsens. When does economic situation of a person worsen? When either too much of debt is created, all these assets are going away, then that is what we call as worsening of the balance sheet. Same thing for government. When its assets are reducing, liabilities are increasing, or any one of them is also happening, then also it is worsening of balance sheet. Indian budget is facing this revenue deficit since many years. We are consistently facing the same problem. So what we are doing, use of capital receipt for meeting extra consumption expenditure, it is leading to inflation in the economy. Because consistently we are taking more and more loans and spending this. For revenue expenditure means it will actually go into hands of welfare schemes, that means poorer people, and that leads to increased velocity. Higher borrowings increase future burden, this part we have already seen, as this is finally added to fiscal deficit itself. Intergenerational equity is affected as we are taking too many loans. High revenue deficit gives a warning signal to government to curtail expenditure or increase revenue. From time to time government will set up expenditure reforms commissions it has set up to identify how to reduce our unnecessary expenditure, and they have given recommendations which we have implemented. But majority of this unnecessary expenditure is coming from political expediency. That means they will randomly promise some scheme for some state which is going for election, so this will lead to extra revenue expenditure. You understood this? So according to far-sighted approach, that means ideally what we should do is we should have a revenue surplus. That is like a dream. At least we should have neutral revenue. That means we should not have some sort of revenue deficit or surplus revenue. So revenue receipt should always be more than revenue expenditure, so that surplus can be used for development projects. This is normal, you can say, this is how it should ideally work. But in India, at least if we reduce this revenue deficit to low or zero, that itself is good enough. So this is basically government's policy right now is try to reduce this revenue deficit. Normally, whenever we are in fiscal expansion, it is difficult to do these type of things because we are in the process of trying and recovering this economy back into normal. So whenever expansion has already occurred and recovery has happened, we will usually go into a phase called as fiscal consolidation. After expansion, it will always be followed by consolidation. Fiscal consolidation means we will try to reduce unnecessary expenditure and increase revenue as much as possible to stabilize the economy. So during that time, we will try to do these type of things, reduce revenue deficit, etc. So we saw fiscal deficit, revenue deficit. We have seen so far three things. One is budget deficit itself 10 rupees, that means 90 here and 100 here. Then fiscal deficit is 8 rupees loan taken, even monetized deficit printed money if you consider, then you can say that is 2 rupees. Then this is at the end of the year, but monthly imagine some 2 rupees or 1 rupee whatever is there shortage, that is called revenue deficit. And from that if you take out grants for creation of capital assets, then we get effective revenue deficit. Only thing remaining is primary deficit. Primary deficit means, look at this, it is very simple. Fiscal deficit as of now is how much? Take 8 rupees as fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is 8 rupees minus interest payment. Imagine this year we are taking 8 rupee loan to pay back 3 rupees interest of previous years whatever we have already taken. We saw that already we have a stock of loan. This fiscal deficit is only this flow of loan. This stock of loan has its own interest that we have to pay or not. So for to paying that interest we are taking 3 rupee loan, out of this 3 rupees is only going for that. How much are we spending in the economy then? 5 rupees. Whatever we are spending in the economy is actually primary deficit. You understood this? So difference between fiscal deficit of current year and interest payments on the previous borrowings will give us primary deficit of 5 rupees. Implications of primary deficit. It reflects the extent to which such interest commitments have compelled the government to borrow. When we look at this primary deficit and fiscal deficit together, we will know that how much interest we are paying and why we are taking this much loan, because we have too much of interest commitment. So it will give us clear picture of how much we are forced to borrow just because of interest commitments. Indicates how much of the government borrowings are going to meet expenses other than interest payments. That is what 5 rupees is what we are spending in the economy. Expenses other than interest payments means that is the primary deficit, that is what we are spending in the economy. A low or zero primary deficit. Now you can tell me yourself, imagine primary deficit should be 0, then what should happen? Fiscal deficit 8, interest payment is also 8. What does it indicate about the economy? Entire borrowing we are taking is to finance the interest rate only. When do we do this sort of a scenario where we don't want to take any loan at all? This is almost as if it is a, you can say, balanced budget. Only loan we are taking is to pay back interest, other than that we are not taking extra loan. What type of a policy is it? In expansionary policy, what do? We take more loans. If we are not taking loans, we have reduced loans or maybe 0 loans, then that is contractionary policy. That means if primary deficit is near 0 or it is very low, we are not going for expansion. We are probably going for consolidation, contraction type of policy. You understood this? Imagine primary deficit is very high. That means primary deficit is 10 and we are taking fiscal deficit as of now is maybe, you can say 12. 12 minus some 2 is 10. So why are we taking such a big loan? What type of what does it indicate? We are in a strong fiscal expansion. We are spending a lot of money in the economy, even over and above interest payments, we are spending much more money in the economy. Primary deficit will tell us, apart from interest payment, the extra money that we are spending, how much is it? And if it is high, it means we are in trying to, you can say, go for expansionary policy. If it is very low, it is probably, or 0, it is contractionary policy. So interest commitments have forced the government to borrow. Otherwise they would not even borrow it during contractionary policy. Why are they borrowing? Because only because they have to pay interest they have borrowed. That is what is low or 0 primary deficit. Primary deficit is the root cause of fiscal deficit in India. That means so far primary deficit is the root cause means is one statement. In the last 8 to 10 years consistently we are in fiscal expansion. Why we are in? By the time we slowly go for consolidation, there is another crisis. And out of last 10 years, probably 6 years, 7 years, we are in expansion only. And if we are in expansion, what happens to primary deficit? It is high. Because it is high, you can say overall loans of India have accumulated. Interest payments have considerably increased also because loans have accumulated. So this is actually separate statement. This is separate statement. So look at it like this. In the last 10 years, loans have accumulated because of too much of primary deficit. Now interest payments have increased, considerably increased in the recent years. So in the long run, what should we do? Interest payment should be reduced by repayment of loans. How do we do it? What are the options available to repay loans, whatever we have taken? Either, we can do disinvestment, that means we can sell some PSUs and whatever lump sum amount we get, we can pay back that loan. Another option is increase tax rate, tax some people and use that low payback loan. But usually when we tax too much, then it creates a vicious cycle that is not a practical approach, especially during expansion. Maybe when we are in consolidation, a little bit of reduction in expenditure, increase in tax can be done. So right now a practical way would only be selling assets of government, like maybe PSUs, maybe even land, defense land and such other things. These are the approaches of government. You understood this? Yeah. Yeah, you can write about that also. If we rationalize revenue expenditure, that means reduce unnecessary expenditure in revenue, whatever accumulates, whatever we save, that can also be used to pay back our loans. Printing new notes, and if we pay back loans using printing new notes, what would happen? Most of the loans in India are domestic loans. We print notes and we give it into the economy, it will create inflation. So that is usually, as long as inflation is high, we can't do it. If inflation has reduced it to such an extent, maybe to some, we can do it. Here it is just summary of all the deficits, whatever we just discussed is present. Any questions so far? What is the present level of deficit is given here, you can see fiscal deficit is 5.9%. This is 23-24 budget estimates, and this revenue deficit is 2.9. This is primary deficit is 2.3. Effective revenue deficit is 1.1. These are this you should know. Even they may not ask actual numbers, but if you know this, then there is a possibility of elimination of options if you know the actual number. They will not exactly ask the 2.9, 2.3, all these things, but it is still useful in exam if you know it. So in the long term trend, if you see these deficits, what actually has happened to this deficit? If you see in 2011, why this deficit was so high during this time? Because of subprime crisis. After 2008-9 crisis, we had increased this deficit to such an extent. Then by 2019, we felt we are now in consolidation phase. And after this, again there was expansion because of COVID. You can see that there has been, repeatedly again and again we are going for expansion. So this is deficit trend currently. This part we already saw. You will find actually 3 are mandatory numbers: actuals of previous year, revised estimates of current year, estimates of next year. These budget estimates of last year are only there for comparison, that is not mandatory. So these are 3 set of numbers. Same thing is given here. Whatever we already discussed, it is written. So coming to charged and voted expenditure. This part also is polity economy somewhat, there is an intersection here. When parliament is actually, you can say, giving permission for executive to spend the money, voted expenditure means parliament has to vote on it. That means they will have to vote for the demand for grants and they will have to pass this appropriation bill, finance bill. But some part of it is, you can say, removed from this parliament's power to vote it, you can say they cannot vote or they cannot disapprove of it, it will automatically be deducted. That is called as charged expenditure. Whatever parliament has the power to vote, that is called voted expenditure. Why do we have this sort of charged expenditure? Sometimes we may have to maintain independence of some institutions. Like for example, imagine judiciary. If somebody in government will call the Supreme Court judge tomorrow and say, if you don't give the judgment favorably, we'll cut your salary or payment or something, then will it lead to violation of independence of Supreme Court or not? So that means to maintain independence of some institutions, we should, you can say, we should maintain their financial independence also. If operational independence needs to be maintained, there should not be financial authority of one institution over the other. To bring this sort of, you can say, power to judiciary and such other institutions which have been made into charged expenditure, you can say that is the major reason why we have this charged expenditure. Also, when the consequences are very severe, if we don't spend money for that, then also we have this sort of charged expenditure. For example, imagine we have taken a loan. The government so far in the last 75 years after independence, there has not been any instance where it has not paid interest or it has not paid back the loan on time. And that means we have maintained a reputation. Because we have maintained a reputation, there is huge demand for government bonds because government will always pay back. Imagine Parliament has power to vote whether you have to pay interest or not. Then what would happen to government's reputation here? If they say we don't pay interest, then people will stop trusting government. And that means government will not be able to get loans when it needs, and even if it is there, it will be risky for people. That means they will only give it at higher interest rate. We don't want that to happen. So that is why you can say even these type of things are also charged. They are not voted. So charged expenditure include expenditure which is not required to be voted on by Parliament, charged directly from consolidated fund. It can be discussed, but it cannot be voted. These type of questions are common in prelims. Charged expenditure can be discussed in Parliament. They will give a statement. Is this true or false? People, when they see charged expenditure and Parliament, already the mind is racing and it is going to, you can say, okay, the Parliament has no power with regard to charge. They will miss that word discussed. And this is how you can say, you will make mistakes. So you have to make sure that every word is read properly. Then you can avoid that sort of a mistake. Examples include interest payments, salaries, allowances of the President and judges of Supreme Court. So you can see interest payments, even salaries also. People are working for government because government will give some sort of permanent job and give salary probably. If people lose trust on government, first of all it is giving less salary, then they will all quit. So that means if government has to run smoothly, then it has to maintain trust in all these cases. That is why you can say charged expenditure is present. Voted expenditure, anything other than charged expenditure where Parliament has authority to vote is called as voted expenditure. So monetized deficit we just discussed, the printed currency is called as monetized deficit. How are we exactly financing this deficit? Since a long time, if you see, when we got independence, we did not have this level of sophistication, you can say, with regard to economy. So at that time, in majority of India was also, when we got independence in 40s, 50s, it was non-monetized economy. People were still using some sort of barter in villages. It means people, I grow wheat and you grow rice and we exchange a little bit. Money was there, but some amount of barter was still there. So that means we realized that we can print more money because people are not even using for every transaction this money. So what government was doing was, there used to be this sort of monetized deficit. In 1955 there was an agreement between government and RBI. Agreement was very simple. Government will open an account in RBI, and whenever government withdraws the money from RBI in this account, RBI will print extra money and put it, you can say, into the account. It is like an unlimited type of withdrawal. You can keep on doing it and RBI will keep on adding. But what is the problem with this scenario? Inflation. At this time, because money was not yet, you can say, used enough, we could get away with it. Also India was a closed economy and a lot of other situations, socialist economy. But this is called automatic monetization. Whatever we just discussed, this agreement is automatic monetization agreement. That means whenever government uses, they will print this cash. But after 1990s, that means 91, we opened up the economy, LPG era, and we are interacting with other countries. Then we realized that this cannot go on forever and we need to do some change with regard to this. And then we came up with a solution which is called as ways and means advances. In 1997, we introduced this ways and means. Ways and means right now defines the relationship with regard to government finances between RBI and government. Right now, if they have to print currency and give it to government, it is not treated as a handover, it is treated as a loan. That means RBI will give this loan to government and there are clear conditions. You have to pay back this loan within which time. This is called as ways and means advance. Monetized deficit, it is still monetized only. That means it is still printed currency only, but it will only come in the form of a loan. It is not just RBI can print any amount of currency, government will spend it. So you can see this agreement was signed. RBI gives temporary loan facilities to center and state as a banker to government. This temporary loan facility is called as ways and means. 90-day. Yeah, overdraft is part of this, we'll see. 90 days is the tenure of the loan. That means normally loan is given for 90 days. Interest is charged at repo rate. Just like banks are paying repo rate to RBI, even government will also pay repo rate. Limits are mutually decided. Mutually means both of them will sit together, they will decide what will be the limits for these ways and means advances. Imagine government spends all this money and says I want a little more, then it is called as a breach of ways and means, and extra borrowings will be given, and this extra borrowing is called as overdraft. Interest rate for overdraft is repo plus 2% extra, and overdrafts are only given for 10 days. Within 10 days government has to raise another treasury bill or something and pay back to RBI, otherwise it has to pay very high interest. You understood this?
So does the FRBM Act not prohibit printing of new currency? Then how can RBI print it for government?
FRBM Act is not exactly with regard to, you can say, printing of currency. It is only, you can say, of overall finances of government.
But there is this provision that the bank cannot print new currency.
No, bank, as of now printing of currency can be done. When government gives an order, RBI can print it. RBI can give this money to government, but it will be considered as a loan. As long as government pays interest, it will be. But RBI government both know that if they print too much, there will be inflation. So that is how they are trying to manage it. Okay, that is different. That is actually RBI will normally keep doing operations with all these banks, right? RBI earns lot of interest, and that is the profit of RBI. As an agency, who owns RBI? Government. What RBI was doing was, after 2008 financial crisis, RBI felt that I need to build a, some buffer. I need to build my own cash reserve so that if something extraordinary happens in the economy, then I will be able to use this buffer to resolve that situation. This was, you can say, this buffer it was building, and government said you don't need to keep this much of money as buffer. It changed the formula of how to decide how much money to be kept as buffer, and remaining money whatever is there apart from this formula, this was surplus money that was available with RBI. Usually at the end of the year, the profits that it will earn apart from this buffer, it will give it to government, because who owns RBI? Finally it is government only. This is the surplus fund transfer that was there in news. I think 1 year back it was there. So this is what is surplus fund. This loan, whatever government takes as a loan, in the constitution they have said that consolidated fund of India is automatically considered as collateral for, you can say, this loan, government's loan. So you can think theoretically consolidated fund of India is collateral. Practically they don't actually do any collateral type of transaction.
And sir, this WMA, so whenever this provision is used, so it is necessary that this loan has to be supplied by printing new currency, or RBI using SDF or other kind of facility can raise money from the banks and then give it as a loan to the government?
It is left to RBI how they want to do it. It is not necessary that they print currency, but the net effect is new money will flow into the economy always, and that means for our simplicity we can assume that they are printing currency and bringing it. You understood this? So for overdrafts we saw interest rate is repo plus 2%. Overdrafts are given only for 10 days. So it is very simple. I'll try to summarize this ways and means. First thing is RBI will give a loan to government. This is what we call as ways and means. Usually this money is printed, new currency coming into the economy, and this time period for this loan is how much? It is 90 days. Interest rate is normally repo rate itself, and usually limit is decided mutually by both of them agreeing. If sometimes limit is breached and more loan is required, it is called as what? Overdraft. Interest rate for overdraft is repo plus 2%, and time period for overdraft is 10 days only. This is WMA. This is normal WMA that is available to central government. For state governments, apart from this normal WMA, there is a special WMA used. Special WMA first has to be exhausted, then only they will come to normal WMA. What is special WMA? It is same as how bank will be given a loan by RBI and are repo rate by pledging government securities. That is what is special WMA. That means state government, if it has government securities, it can pledge it with RBI and bring a loan under repo rate. That is called special WMA. If they need more money apart from whatever the money they have, whatever government securities they have, then they will come to this normal WMA. You understood this? State has both options, special and normal WMA, whereas center will usually use only normal WMA, it will not go for special WMA. Yes, Bimal Jalan Committee's economic capital framework, that is what you were asking, right? Money coming from RBI, this is old news now, but that was basically, you can say, buffer that RBI had built. So this is basically WMA scheme. Everybody understood what is ways and means. This is ways and means is what is governing RBI monetized deficit right now in India. Special and normal. So special state governments actually, if they want a loan from RBI, first they will go for special WMA. Special WMA means if they have any government securities, they can pledge it with RBI and they can bring a loan under repo rate, just like a normal bank does. And apart from that extra, whatever they imagine, they have 10 crores worth of government securities. Imagine they need 20 crore loan. The remaining 10 crore where they don't have government securities, they will come for normal WMA, and there, based on last 3 years, they will see last 3 years what was your revenue expenditure, and RBI will recommend, and both of them agree on a limit, and then same, everything else is same. Everything else is like same 90-day loan, repo rate, you can say that part is same. You understood this? So this is basically ways and means advances. So we'll take a break before this public debt, and from here we'll continue after break. Yeah. Inflation indexed bonds. So everybody knows what the meaning of bond is. Bond means government is taking a loan. When they fix the interest rate of the bond, they will link it. Indexing we already saw is linking it to inflation. My CPI index is showing 6%. Inflation indexed bond means they will say whatever is inflation currently plus 1% will give interest or plus 2% will give interest. So it is variable interest. Interest will always not be same. As CPI changes, the interest of this bond also will change. Whatever is the interest rate currently, you will still get real interest of extra at least 1% or 2%. You will never make a loss if you buy inflation indexed bonds. You understood this? This is meaning of inflation indexed bond. For how many days this class? This usually 7-8 days class, depending upon what we are able to cover in 7-8 days. I have prioritized important things that usually in exam they ask. They are mostly simple questions that they will ask in exam. That is why I am talking about mostly simple aspects. Apart from that, current affairs, whatever I felt is important I have added, and economic survey budget. So coming to public debt. Public debt means borrowings of government, whatever government has borrowed is called public debt. It includes, you can say, both internal debt and external debt. So you can see market loans, special bearer bonds, treasury bills, special loans, any new type of a loan government can automatically, whenever they want they can create. Special means I gave you example of market stabilization scheme. For different purposes they will take loan, war bonds, all these type of bonds, everything will come under public debt. It can be split into two parts. Internal means within the country, external we already saw, non-Indian source outside the country. So these are some classification of debt. Productive and unproductive means if we are using these loans, mostly you can say for building some assets like infrastructure or something, then it is a productive asset, productive debt. If we take a loan and use it for, you can say, some populist schemes, then usually it is not, it is actually revenue expenditure and it is actually increasing our liabilities but not actually concomitantly creating any positive outcomes. So it is unproductive debt. This is how we identify whether it is productive or unproductive. Then voluntary and compulsory. Sometimes when government does not have enough money and unable to sell bonds easily also, people are not buying, then we can go for compulsory debt. Compulsory means people don't have a choice here. Government itself will take the money from your account and it will issue bonds. One example of compulsory debt that happened in India was when 7th Pay Commission report came into picture. They said the new extra salary, people who were getting 60,000 salary, it increased to 1 lakh. So they said out of this 1 lakh, 10,000 rupee will not be given in cash, we will just issue bonds. That means, so government said that 10,000 will automatically be considered as a loan that people have given to government. That is compulsory loan. You understood? So this is example of compulsory debt. Usually compulsory debt is very rare because people don't like it and they will not vote for that government easily. They will lose, you can say, political points if they go for compulsory debt. So only in extraordinary situations when there is no other choice they go for compulsory debt. Internal external debt everybody already knows, we just discussed. Short term, medium, long term also everybody already knows. In India, short term is usually less than 1 year. Long term means up to 30 years. We have not issued any debt more than 30 years in India. Longest debt issued is 30 years. So this is basically short term. Medium term is anything in between is short term, medium term. Redeemable and irredeemable debt. Redeemable means, usually debt means what are the parameters of a loan. There is principal amount, there is interest rate, there is time period. So these are the parameters. Imagine there is no time period. There is only principal amount is 1 crore, interest rate is 10%, only this much is returned. If government takes a loan like this, there is no guarantee when the loan will be given back. But until it is given back, it will continue to pay interest. This is called as irredeemable debt. You cannot have a claim on this loan whenever you want. You cannot say I give my principal back. Whenever government decides that they want to give the principal only, then they will give it. This is called as irredeemable debt. Recently, banks have used this irredeemable debt, what we call as, in a newspaper you might have seen, AT1 bonds. AT1 is additional tier 1 bonds. If you remember, we discussed about tiers of capital. What is tier 1 capital? Tier 1 is permanent capital and tier 2 is temporary capital. Permanent capital is usually by selling shares they would have received money. Temporary capital means they would have taken loans. But banks said we don't have enough, you can say, possibilities to raise enough tier 1 capital. So RBI gave them another choice. See, you can take a loan that is tier 2 capital, but if it does not have a maturity period, then it is bank's decision when they have to pay it back. There is no liability exactly on any given date for the bank. Then we will consider that, we will classify it as additional tier 1 bond. That means that capital that is raised through this tier 1, actually it is actually a bond. Ideally it should come under which tier? It should come under tier 2 ideally, because it is a bond means it is a loan. But because there is no maturity period, bank has the choice, discretion to decide when to pay it back. RBI has given this option that we will consider it as tier 1 capital. So issue these bonds and take the money, and these are called as AT1 bonds, additional tier 1 bonds. So that is called as irredeemable debt. AT1 bonds is an example of irredeemable debt because there is no time period return on this AT1 bonds. You understood this?
These are kind of method of last resort types.
Correct. So when we don't have enough, ideally in India, tier 1 capital means shareholder should give it. In India, majority of the banks are government banks. Shareholder is government. Government is busy with dealing with this crisis, a COVID, post-COVID recovery. They don't have enough money to give tier 1 capital to achieve Basel III norms. So that is why you can say RBI has created other options. If we had that choice, then we would not do this. That means if we had our own original money to give for tier 1 itself, that means you can see it is extraordinary type of measure only. Funded and unfunded debt. So here, funded means, imagine it is a short-term loan, 30-day loan. They don't usually create any plan for that loan. It is also small loan. If it is a 30-day loan, they would have taken maybe 100 crores and pay back that 100 crores. So by getting tax or something. But if you take a long-term loan, 20-year loan, that is usually a big loan also. That means it is 50,000 crore, 1 lakh crore, etc. This type of a loan, we need to have some sort of a plan. How will we pay it back once 20 years is over? Imagine we don't have a plan. Suddenly at that time we tax people all these lakhs of crores and we paid back. What happens? Same problem we saw in fiscal cliff. If we pay back so much of loan at once, we tax people so much at once, what type of problem will occur? Vicious cycle will occur because sufficient demand will be reduced in the economy because people's disposable income will reduce because all the money has gone for tax. To avoid this type of a situation, and also government also should have enough money to pay back, you can say, that means if you have a proper plan, we can be confident that we will be able to raise enough money after 20 years to pay back this loan. These type of loans are called as funded. Funded means we will create a separate fund to pay back this loan. Imagine we take a 20-year loan for 1 lakh crore. Every year we will add some money, imagine 1000 crores into that fund. When we add 1000 crores, this will be invested somewhere. 1000 crores invested now will become 10,000 crores by time of 20 years. So because of it's being invested, you can say the amount of total loan that we actually will pay back will reduce or not, because the returns we are getting returns. That is why this fund where we will add this money, this fund is called as sinking fund. I'll try to summarize this. Government, when it takes a loan for long term, that means very big loan for 20 years, 30 years, it will create some sort of a plan how to pay back this loan. And that plan means it will create a fund called as sinking fund. And sinking fund means every year it will keep on adding a little bit of money into this sinking fund. Sinking fund will have a fund manager who will invest this money in whichever is giving reasonable returns with low risk. So this investment will lead to the sinking fund growing. Fund will grow without government need not put all the entire 1 lakh crore. Total investment, if you see, of government will only be 70,000 crore. Extra 30% has been returns that they have been able to achieve by investing it. So that means total government spending will reduce or not, because they are doing investment. So this is the one advantage of sinking fund. Second advantage is, because now there is enough money available in this sinking fund to pay back to people, we will not create a fiscal cliff type of situation where we are actually paying back this loan. These type of loans are called as, funded debts. Where we create a sinking fund, that is called a funded debt. Where we don't create a sinking fund, that is called unfunded debt. You understood this? Console bonds also. Yes, another name, you can say one type of bond is console bond. Government releases console bonds, CONSOL. Console bond means irredeemable. It will not have time period written on it. and the name they have given for this bond is consol bond. Even 81 bond is also, additional tier 1 bond is also example of irredeemable debt. So, I mean, this is irredeemable debt example. We were discussing about funded and unfunded. Consol bond is example of irredeemable debt. Any questions so far? Everybody is clear with sinking fund and this redeemable, irredeemable 81 bonds. Coming to who manages this public debt. Constitution gives executive branch of government, you can say, the power to borrow on security of Consolidated Fund of India. That means the collateral for every loan that government takes by issuing these bonds, all these things is always Consolidated Fund of India. RBI is acting as an agent of government implementing the borrowing program. This part we saw already in monetary policy. Management of union government's public debt is an obligation for RBI. That means when RBI was created long ago in 1934, in the RBI Act they have written that RBI will have obligation to do this for on behalf of central government. But at that time provincial governments were, you can say, somewhat it was not as clear as it is now. So because of this reason they had not written anything about provincial governments. Now we have state governments. So they have not written anything with regard to state governments. So state governments will have to sign an agreement with RBI for RBI to do the same job that it is doing with central government. It means raising a loan on behalf of state government. RBI will also do it, but based on an agreement it has signed with the state government. So RBI is an agent of central government, implements the borrowing program. Management of union government's public debt is an obligation, but RBI undertakes management of public debt of various state governments only by agreement with that state government. Then jurisdiction of this debt management. Jurisdiction means who has the power to take control of this and take decisions with regard to this. Reserve Bank of India has total control over domestic marketable debt. Domestic means within the country. Marketable means what? Which can be sold and bought. They are all called as bearer bonds. Bearer means whoever bears the bond is the owner of the bond, they can sell it in the market. This is called as domestic marketable debt. Dated securities, treasury bills, cash management bills. So what exactly are these? Cash management bill means less than 90-day maturity of government bond is called cash management bond and bill. I mean treasury bill is less than 1 year maturity is treasury bill, and dated security more than 1 year maturity, all of them are called as dated security. These are the three types of government bonds that are in existence. Ministry of Finance, Office of Aid and Accounts Division, it will handle external debt. External means whenever we take a loan from outside the country, it is handled by Ministry of Finance. Whenever we take a loan from inside the country, that is all handled by RBI. But we already saw that there are some other liabilities that will come into public account of India, like post office related deposits and small savings instruments. That will be done by both RBI and Ministry of Finance coming together. Why is it like this? Because we already saw that monetary transmission of RBI was getting affected because of the interest rates being higher in small savings instruments. So RBI was also included in this, you can say, this decision making with regard to what should be the interest rates and other aspects of regulation of small savings instruments. You understood? So now both of them will come together and they decide provisions, rules, regulations, interest rates with regard to small savings instruments. So you can see it is very simple. RBI internal debt, government external debt, and public account of India, other liabilities whatever are there, RBI government both. This is basically as of now jurisdiction of public debt. For monetary fiscal coordination, because you can say separate aspects of debt is handled by separate agency, there has to be some sort of a coordination mechanism between them. So for that we have created Cash and Debt Management Committee which meets regularly. In this committee a representative of RBI, a representative of government will come together. They will try to integrate all the aspects of government debt to get a clear bigger picture of totally how much loan government has taken. Right now it is a fragmented type of approach. We want to resolve this problem by creating a single agency which will handle all debt of government, that will be called as PDMA. We already saw that there is a proposal to set up this PDMA. They have already set up a PDMC which is a learning body. Once it has learned enough, it will be converted into PDMA. Public Debt Management Cell has been set up. So this is basically jurisdiction of public debt management. Any questions so far? No questions. Coming to disinvestment. So this is also conceptual aspect you have to understand. Disinvestment means when government sells any assets, actually it is disinvestment. But right now, disinvestment has come to have a connotation which means government is selling shares of public sector enterprises. That is the normal common meaning of disinvestment. So when we sell shares of any public sector enterprises, we call it as disinvestment. When we sell enough shares to change management control of this company from government to private sector, then it is called as privatization. How many shares should we sell to change management control? More than 50%. We have already seen how corporate governance structure works, shareholders, board of directors, management. In this, whoever owns more than 50% shares is the owner of the company. If government sells more than 50%, imagine owns only 20%, then other people, the private sector has become owner of the company, then we call it as privatization. It is also part of disinvestment, but all disinvestment is not privatization. All privatization is disinvestment because we are selling shares more than 50%. Selling shares means automatically disinvestment. Along with that, more than 50% criteria should also be satisfied. Then only it is privatization. This disinvestment privatization is old, it was already there since a long time. But after 2014, they have created one more thing called as strategic disinvestment. Strategic disinvestment is a further subset of privatization itself. Ideally, you should call it a strategic privatization, but people don't like the word privatization much, so they have just used a euphemism so that people won't understand what it is. They call it as strategic disinvestment. So that means strategic disinvestment means what they will do is privatization will happen, that means ownership change will happen, but it will not happen randomly to anybody who wants to buy. We will strategically identify who, if they buy this company, will it lead to maximum positive impact on society. Take an example of BSNL. If you want to sell BSNL, we can have an open offer of who wants to buy these shares, and randomly people will buy 10,000 shares, 20,000 shares, but that will not lead to any impact. It will just be BSNL from a public company, it will become a private company. But instead of that, if we choose, maybe there are 5 big telecom players in India, and we will give a criteria, then 5 telecom players will come up, and among these 5 telecom players we will have an open bidding, and only these telecom players are allowed to buy BSNL. If Jio buys BSNL, will they be able to make better utilization of all the customer data, existing infrastructure, everything or not? Yes, rather than just making BSNL into a public to private entity, it would be better if already somebody who is already there in that particular industry, they buy this and they do some sort of a merger with the existing entity, then it will be much better for BSNL also, it will be better for people also. And that is what strategically we will choose who should we sell this company to, then that is called as strategic disinvestment. You understood this? Yeah.
This disinvestment to privatization, does it change or not, like the subset thing? Because disinvestment will be 10% also.
Yes.
Privatization has to be more than 50%.
Correct. Disinvestment, even if they sell 10% also, it is disinvestment, that is correct. Privatization means when more than 50% happens, it is still disinvestment, but now it is also called privatization. You understood? And it is, if you sell it to anyone also, it is privatization, but if you choose particularly only to sell this particular strategic player, it is still disinvestment also, privatization also, it is both are true, and now it is also called strategic disinvestment in this particular case.
But in strategic disinvestment, it is not necessary that the transfer of shares should be more than 50%.
Yes, it is not necessary. There is a provision where they have said that you don't have to buy more than 50% shares and still we will give you ownership. But no, in practice, nobody has shown any interest in that particular type of strategic disinvestment. Because if government changes, they may change the agreement, and next 5 years later, they don't know whether they will still have control over this company. So they have felt it is too uncertain to go for that sort of strategic disinvestment, and that means what they have done is they've said nobody has actually practically done it. They have only done this way. That means I want to buy the entire company. If you want to sell it, I will buy it. Otherwise, no. So this is how they have done it.
So with respect to asset monetization, they say that it is not disinvestment.
Asset monetization is not disinvestment. Why it is not disinvestment? Asset monetization, how it is working is, already an existing asset of government is present. Asset means it is not a commercial asset we are talking about here. Imagine a road. National Highway Authority of India has actually built a road of 100 kilometers, on this road we will build toll. Until now there was no toll. Now we build a toll on both sides and we start collecting toll. 3 months later we have data on how many vehicles are going, how much toll is collected. Based on this we estimate what is revenue per year. And after this we go for auction. We are willing to give this road on lease for 33 years for any private player. And how much they will be bidding between 10-15 private players. Somebody will say 50,000 crores, somebody 80,000 crores. Whoever is highest bidder, we will give a lease to them. And that means now we will get enough lump sum amount of money to build another road. Well, they will continue for next 33 years to collect toll. That means this is not actually a commercial asset. It is a public good, ideally. Now we are converting it into a private good. Government land, if they sell it, that is different. If they lease it out, then you can say it can be considered as asset money.
Temporary, right?
This is temporary.
Monetization is temporary.
Correct.
Privatization is permanent because you have the shares.
Correct. So asset monetization is only a lease. Eventually it will come back to government ownership, and that is the difference. So you can see in strategic disinvestment, procedure for strategic sale will be prepared by DIPAM, that is Department of Investment and Public Asset Management. Earlier we used to call it as Department of Disinvestment, but like I said, same, they have changed it to Department of Investment, so people will not get clarity on what they are doing. So that is, like I said, it is a euphemism. In strategic disinvestment, government sells major portion of its stake to a strategic buyer and gives management control also. That means they will choose the strategic buyer. It is not a random sale to anybody who wants to buy the shares. Under it, strategic partner may hold less percentage of shares than the government also. That means this legal provision is present. That means it is possible for them only to buy 30% shares, but government will give up the ownership. But it is reversible. Because of this reason, they have not shown interest through this provision. Mostly they are buying more than 50% shares and they are taking control. Here I have just given an example where somebody owns less than 50% shares, but government through agreement has given ownership control to them. So Finance Ministry has empowered Niti Aayog to advise government on strategic disinvestment of CPSEs. Niti Aayog is the advisor and DIPAM is the implementing agency of strategic disinvestment currently. One more thing you have to understand, which is important from perspective of opinions. Sometimes there will be open-ended type of MCQs also. You should know what is the present, what should I have the opinion so that you will be able to choose the option. Disambiguate at least between options. Right now the ideological orientation of government is towards total privatization of profit-making entities. That means eventually, maybe by 2040 or 2050, government will no longer own any PSUs as such. Right now we are, little bit of shuffling will happen, but in the long run, our goal is to give up ownership of all PSUs. Government is going, you can say in other countries they are already in advanced stage of doing this. India also wants to go in the same direction of LPG as in other countries. Why they are doing this? Because LPG means liberalization, privatization, globalization. Privatization as a part of it is present. Government need not own profit making entities. The primary goal of government is not profit at all, it is welfare. So to focus on whatever its primary goal is, it should offload unnecessary activities. This is what World Bank, IMF and a lot of other developmental agencies across the world have suggested, and this is the direction that government is going in right now also. So there is a famous quote, I think by Friedman, the business of government is not business. That means government should focus on welfare. Business of business is business. That means business should not be expected to do welfare type of activities. You understood this? So that is what we are following right now. We have to exit from profit making type of things, focus more on what businesses cannot do. There are some things that only government can do, and that is what we should focus on. Because if government does not do it, nobody else will be capable of doing it. Can you give example of what those things are?
So skilling, sir? Skilling of labor and citizens.
Skilling, yes, you can consider human capital development is one thing. Maintaining army. So that means defense of the country, private sector cannot do it. Law and order police, private sector cannot do it. Protection of environment, there is no profit in it, private sector will not do it. Protection of vulnerable sections, weaker sections of society, they will also, they will not do. doing some sort of research and development which is very uncertain in nature, which is very costly and may take forever, and we don't even know whether we will get any results. Consider we are trying to create some sort of a fusion reactor which so far has not been created. The ideal candidate for this who should invest is government, because private sector cannot take that kind of risk. Doing research and development on some type of diseases which affect only very few people, like for example rare tropical diseases or something, which private sector, if they do investment also, they cannot earn any profit, but still it does not mean that those lives are any less valuable. Market has failed in this scenario and government should take the responsibility. This is basically the present ideological orientation of government, to give up profit making, because what is the major source of revenue for government? It is tax, it is not profit. When government is already getting a share of everybody else's profit, there is no need to think about earning a profit on its own. You understand this? So that means Niti Aayog in every report, it is reiterating the same thing since 2014 until now. All ideology is same, more LPG, everywhere LPG, including agriculture also. So that is, you can say, we are moving in that direction. Sometimes we can't move too quickly because it will create a reaction in society, but eventually we will get there. You understood? So after 2014 we have set up this DIPAM. DIPAM under the Ministry of Finance has been made the nodal department for this PSUs. Based on Niti Aayog recommendations, Government of India decided to withdraw from industrial sector. You can see, you don't see this sort of open-ended type of statement everywhere, but this is what Niti Aayog wants: complete exit from industrial sector. Bring down equity shares in all non-strategic public sector enterprises 26% or lower. This is medium-term goal. Long-term goal is full exit. Criticism is disinvestment is seen as a resource raising exercise. So some people, they argue that yes, maybe in the long run this ideology is fine, but when we sell this PSU, it is sale of an asset. When we sell an asset and a lump sum amount of money is received, what would be the best use of this money? To create some sort of an asset is better use of money. Instead of that, what we are doing is some loan waiver or something which is not productive for the economy. So this is the actual criticism here. Not that we are doing disinvestment itself, but we are not using the proceeds of this disinvestment properly.
Sir, the three farm laws that were introduced like previously, so they were also like some kind of initiative by the government, like to shed a part of its responsibility and bring the private players to the forefront.
Correct. That is also LPG in agriculture. The three farm bills were actually, you can say, same ideology in agriculture. LPG liberalization means what? Remove restrictions of government. Privatization means what? Give more power to private sector. Globalization means we should be able to trade with other countries also easily.
So
it means no restriction.
If implemented that, then the concept of the MSP would have still remained, or like it would have gone along with the bills.
It was possible to remain with MSP also even if they were there. In fact, it does not mean they are not there. Last time I checked, 17 states have implemented farm bills at state level, even though center has removed them. That means already 2/3 of the country has these farm bills now, and probably other states, maybe because they have other different political party, they are not implementing them or something, but eventually probably they will also, you can say, come to the same situation. What is CPSE? CPSE is Central Public Sector Enterprises. Central government is owning them, state government also owns some. Public sector enterprises means profit making entities like, so HAL, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, Steel Authority of India Limited. So similar, these type of things are all CPSEs. So one aspect of disinvestment is, if they are not selling this, you can say PSU, imagine they are only selling 40% of this PSU, the valuation of this total PSU will reduce. Imagine if they are selling 40% of PSU, valuation of PSU is 100 rupees. If they sell 80% of this PSU, valuation will rise to 150 rupees. Why valuation is more if they are selling more? Valuation means what? What is the actual value of the company? Total 100% value. If they are selling more than 50%, who will start owning, who will start managing the company? Private sector. If they manage the company, the potential to earn profit is higher or lower? Higher. Because of this reason, they feel that if they are going to sell more than 50%, the overall valuation or the value of the company is much higher. So this is basically one more problem. Government has claimed why we are going for strategic disinvestment is we will get better valuation and we can, you can say, it is better returns for public money. We will be able to use this money in a better manner. This is one more reason. Valuation of shares is affected by decision not to reduce government holdings to less than 51%, because company has to operate within the constraints imposed by government, because government will continue to own it if it is selling less than 51. So strategic sale will fetch better price, also good for better management of the company in future also. So recent disinvestment that has happened, you can see LIC IPO has happened where government has sold some part of its shares. BPCL, I think 1 or 2 years ago we sold 63,000 crore worth of BPCL, IRCTC, ONGC, Air India. These are all examples of recent disinvestment that have happened. Any questions so far? No questions. Coming to FRBM Act. This is a largely very old act now. Whatever is relevant right now, only that part is important. FRBM means Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act. Why we introduced this? What was the need for it? We already saw, ideally actually, in a parliamentary democracy, if we had separation of powers, legislature, executive, judiciary, legislature is custodian of public purse, it should give permission to executive to spend the money. But in reality, in India, in a parliamentary democracy, legislature, executive are not the same. This is legislature, this is executive. You can see treasury benches within legislature itself. Prime Minister is the leader of the house. Then how can the house hold Prime Minister responsible? That means they can ask questions, but they don't have any power to control executive. Because of this reason, when budget is passed, actually legislature has very little control. It is very rare that because legislature has asked some questions, they will change the budget itself. That is, you can say, it will happen in coalition politics rarely, but otherwise it does not happen at all. So we realized that whatever you can say responsibility fiscally, whatever that means financial responsibility of executive is there, it is not enough in a parliamentary democracy. So we felt that we need to create another law, and that is why we introduced this FRBM Act. So fiscal responsibility and budget management, in the name itself it is there. Executive should have more responsibility with regard to fiscal matters. Budget management means we will create extra rules and regulations with regard to how we manage the budget. There are 3 goals here: introduction of a transparent system of fiscal management, more transparency. It means FRBM obligates government to release more data. In every budget, some extra documents need to be released so that parliament and people, media, everybody gets a clear idea about where government is spending, not spending, etc. So that is transparency. Ensuring equitable distribution of debt over the years. How do we do this? If we have to have intergenerational equity between, you can say, generations, we have to limit the amount of debt that we are taking. FRBM puts a limit on fiscal deficit, how much fiscal deficit you can take, how much new loan we are taking this year. That is how we can ensure equitable distribution of debt over generations. Then ensuring fiscal stability in the long run. That means not doing anything which is going to affect the stability of finances in the entire country. So that is ensuring fiscal stability in the long run. These are the, we can say, 3 goals of FRBM Act. So under transparency, they said that you have to add these type of extra documents in the budget. Earlier they were not mandated by constitution. Extra documents are now mandated by FRBM Act. Macroeconomic framework statement. So what is the present macroeconomic framework? The government will give an explanation about what is the present situation in the country. It will give all the indicators. Right now what is debt to GDP ratio and such other type of things they will give. And medium term fiscal policy statement. Budget is for how many years usually? Only 1 year. But we are making some sort of a plan, 3-year plan Niti Aayog is trying to achieve. How can we link this budget to that plan? There has to be some sort of a alignment mechanism. So in this medium term fiscal policy, they will think about what is our medium term goal here, not just 1 year, how this budget will align with our medium term goal of 3 years also. So that is, and in that they will also, you can say, mention about how alignment will happen, extra, what we are trying to achieve in the long run. And what type of strategy we are following. Is it expansionary policy, contractionary policy, what consolidation, what type of policy we are following? In that fiscal policy strategy statement it will be present, so that there is total clarity among parliamentarians, people, media, etc. This must be placed along with budget documents annually in the parliament. 4 fiscal indicators to be projected in medium term fiscal policy. That means there are 4 indicators which will tell the health of the economy. One is revenue deficit. Revenue deficit, we already know what it is. That means how much extra money we are spending rather than revenue income. So that is one. Second, fiscal deficit also we already know. This is the flow, extra loan that we have taken this year is fiscal deficit. Tax revenue as a percentage of GDP, the major source of income for government, how much income we are able to earn through tax. Then total outstanding liabilities as a percentage of GDP, also called debt to GDP ratio. You can see two things. One is stock of debt, this is flow of debt. And what is adding to this flow of debt is this revenue deficit monthly, in the yearly it will keep adding to this. And tax revenue is telling us efficiency of tax administration. Tax to GDP ratio means what? Imagine GDP of the country is 100 rupees, tax we are collecting as of now is 15 rupees or something. In a normal country like India, maybe in Brazil, South Africa, they are collecting 25 rupees, whereas in India we are only collecting 15. What will that tell us? GDP is increasing, but tax collection is not increasing. What does it mean? What is missing in India? Lack of tax compliance. People are not following tax laws properly. They are not paying their taxes properly. Or there may be corruption in tax department which is leading to losses. Or it is inefficient type of some sort of, you can say, in tax revenue administration something is missing. So we will try to do some changes so that we will be able to achieve more better tax compliance. So this is basically tax revenue as a percentage of GDP. So even though we introduced this FRBM Act, it has hardly ever been followed. That means only 1 year out of 20 it has been followed. And that means it is more known for not being followed rather than being followed. And that is why they set up Singh panel to review this FRBM Act and suggest some changes so that it can be followed in a better manner. So Singh said, let us, you can say, in the short term, take fiscal deficit as a target. That means it should slowly, we should reduce it. And in the long term, we should consider debt to GDP, the stock of you can say this debt itself should be medium term goal. Medium term goal is we should achieve 60% debt to GDP ratio eventually. And short term goal, through this fiscal deficit every year if we change the amount of loan flows, if we change, will stock change eventually or not? Yes. So that means short term goal is fiscal deficit, long term goal is changing the, you can say, debt to GDP ratio itself so that it will come down to 60%. Revenue deficit target steady reduction to 0.25%. But after Singh gave recommendation, we had perpetual problems, you can say, because of all this trade war and COVID and GST, demonetization. All this led to inability to achieve these targets also, whatever Singh said also. And other than this, what else did he say? He said a 3-member fiscal council to be created. Fiscal council means what should it do? It should give multi-year forecast for both center and states. Forecast means at what rate center is probably going to grow, overall GDP of the state and center probably. So GDP of the country and state. Because government itself, if you ask what is the projection for future, will they give a right kind of projection or inflated projection? Mostly they will give inflated because they want to win the next election, they want to show rosy picture to people. Because of this reason we are not getting the accurate numbers of what would be a realistic projection of, you can say, the country. Fiscal council will be responsible as a third party which is not affected by government, which will give realistic projections. And also independent assessment of performance also they will give. Sometimes government will do some manipulations to show, you can say, increased production in GDP numbers, increased achievement of goals. For example, I think one thing I discussed earlier, Nitin Gadkari changed the definition of length of road. Earlier during UPA government, if it was 4-lane road, 8-lane road, it did not matter, 1 kilometer road is 1 kilometer. But right now if it is a 4-lane road, it is a 4-kilometer road will be added, 8-lane road, 8 kilometers will be added. So that means you can see NDA government claims we have laid double amount of road per day compared to UPA government. Fiscal council, when they give independent assessment, they will calculate actually how much increase has happened. You understood this? So that people will be able to clearly identify, other than what government itself is claiming, what is reality. That is the objective of having this sort of, you can say, 3-member fiscal council. You understood? Then he said that FRBM as a name has itself become a joke, nobody follows it. We have to change this to new name, but we have not done this Debt and Fiscal Responsibility Act. Then one thing we have implemented is this escape clause. He said that if we already introduced into existing FRBM Act itself. He said if you want to violate FRBM Act, then there should be a good cause for this violation, then it is allowed, and that is called escape clause. When you can escape from implementing FRBM Act, allow the government to skip the fiscal deficit target for a particular year in situations that include national security concerns, some sort of national security threat, maybe Maoist threat or something else. This sort of a thing, if it is severe, then we may have to spend more money to, you can say, send more troops or something. Act of war, when we have actual war with Pakistan or China or something. National calamity, even COVID can be considered as one of those national calamities. Then collapse of agriculture sector, if there is failure of rainfall or monsoon or something, then also we may have to spend more money. And far reaching structural reforms, like for example GST or demonetization, which have unintended consequences. These are all examples of when we don't need to follow this FRBM Act. Then escape clause can also be triggered if real output growth in economy slips by 3% from average of previous 4 quarters. Real output growth means what? Output growth means we are talking about production. GDP, real means nominal GDP minus inflation. Real GDP, if it is actually reducing by 3% compared to average of 4 quarters, last 4 quarters, it means we are in some sort of a recession. When we are in recession, what type of policy will we follow? Expansionary policy. To follow expansionary policy, do we have to take loans or not? When we take loans, it will violate a fiscal deficit target. So he has said that it is okay, if we are going for expansionary policy, it is fine. But the problem is every year we are going for expansionary policy for some reason or other. That means we are perpetually in this escape clause only. So this is FRBM Review Committee of NK Singh. Any questions on FRBM?
This encasing is the encasing of finance committee. Same.
Yes, same encasing. So coming to consolidation. Earlier I told you that government sometimes, especially when we are in some sort of a slump, depression, recession, they may even print a little extra currency and spend it. When we have printed extra money, then somehow this will come up. But the problem is right now there is too much of money in circulation compared to normal. Because of this too much of money in circulation, when everybody is in a normal mood now, earlier they were in some sort of conservative mood, they were not buying anything. But right now everybody has come back to normal and more money is in circulation, what happens in the economy? It will lead to inflation. To prevent inflation and to improve government's finances, what we do is right now, we will try to take out that money, whatever we put into this economy. That phase is called as fiscal consolidation. So in India it means strengthening of government finances. Usually we go for it whenever after the recession is over and we have come out of it, by pushing more money into the economy, we go for consolidation. What exactly do we do? It is very simple. Improving finances of a household, how we do it? Reduce unnecessary expenditure, increase income wherever possible. That is what we do to government also. On revenue side, rationalization of tax exemption. What is the meaning of rationalization? Rationalization means look at it through a rational lens and identify whichever is unnecessary, remove them. In India, rationalization is reduction. If they publish in newspaper as reduction in subsidy, people will not like it. So rationalization is a euphemism for reduction. Wherever you see rationalization by government documents, in almost all cases, rationalization of PSU employees means they are going to fire someone. So that means you can see this is the meaning of rational. Tax exemptions, if there are too many, we will remove some of them. That is called rationalization of tax exemption. Improving efficiency of tax collection. So wherever it is inefficient, we realize that something needs to be done. We are recently using data analysis. AI has been introduced, Project Insight. This Project Insight is an AI which will scan social media profiles of everybody, all the taxpayers, and identify if there is any discrepancy in their spending. When a person has bought Rolls Royce and claims his income is only 20 lakh, then it will identify this discrepancy and flag it, send a red flag to IRS officers and they will send notice and how did you buy this car. So this is improving efficiency of tax collection. Then tax stability. Stability means not changing tax laws very frequently. If we don't change tax laws frequently, business confidence on the country will improve because ease of doing business will improve. Arun Jaitley, when he was there as finance minister, before he became finance minister, he claimed that UPA government has created tax terrorism in India because All businesses are afraid to invest in India because so much of changes of tax policies are happening. Even retrospective tax is also happening. Retrospective means when they create a new tax from previous date, they will create it. Businesses would have done business assuming tax is 20%. Suddenly they will increase to 30% last year also. Then now they will make losses because they would have done planning, and based on that they would have priced their product or service. So to prevent that, Arun Jaitley promised we will not do any such retrospective or unstable type of tax policies. This is called tax stability. By ensuring tax stability, more businesses will come to India, and existing people also, more people will be interested to produce more and start more businesses. This will also increase tax collection. Production also increases, tax collection also increases. This is revenue side. Expenditure side, cutting out non-essential unproductive activities. For example, bureaucratic unnecessary spending is removed. Foreign travel unnecessarily, if it is happening, they will put restrictions for bureaucrats. So such things. And so then rationalizing subsidies. You can now see rationalizing means they will identify where all we can cut these subsidies. So LPG subsidies was cut, and then they cut this normal petrol diesel subsidy, then they added tax excise on petrol and diesel also. So this way, next kerosene subsidy and such, they are all, you can say, listed for removal. So they will remove all these unnecessary subsidies. This will save money on expenditure side. Reducing time and cost overruns. If a project is not completed on time, imagine a highway, some flyover has to be built. They have hired a lot of some earth movers and labor, everything. And within that time, if we don't do it, every day extra cost is incurred because we have hired all these things. So whenever there is a delay, it will lead to cost overruns also. If we can reduce time overrun, we can reduce cost overrun, we can reduce unnecessary expenditure. So here also we can save money. This is also part of fiscal consolidation. Fiscal consolidation is normal. Every economy goes through it after expansion. If we have the time for going for it, we will go for it. But austerity is an extraordinary type of situation. It is in spirit, in the goal, it is same as consolidation, but it is extreme form of consolidation. Extreme means, imagine a household. Consolidation means instead of going out every week to a restaurant, once in 2 weeks you go. Reduce restaurants by, you can say, 50% or trips by 50%. This is normal consolidation. But austerity means you cancel your Netflix account, Amazon account, sell your sofa set, everything. Then that is called austerity. That means if government is going for extreme form of consolidation where it is trying to do everything it can to reduce expenditure and increase revenue, that is called austerity. Austerity measures, where will it happen? It happened in Greece when they tried to recover money, you can say, so that they can pay back loan to someone else. This is the type of situation when usually they go for austerity. It is not good for the country because austerity is what type of policy? It is contraction, and too much of contraction will lead to vicious cycle, and this vicious cycle is not good for the economy. Austerity measures are reductions in government spending, increase in tax revenues, or both. These harsh steps, harsh means you can see they are extreme, taken to lower budget deficit and avoided debt crisis. If they have taken debt to try pay back this debt, this is what they will do. Governments are unlikely to use austerity measures unless forced to do so by bondholders. Imagine some people who are bondholders, they are asking their money back and forcing government, then they may go for this. These measures act like contractionary policy. The slow economic growth makes it even more difficult to raise revenue needed. This is what happened in Greece. People started protesting and people lost jobs. It created even a bigger crisis inside Greece. Maybe they pay back the debt, but it created a severe crisis within Greece because of vicious cycle. They require changes in government programs. So what they did was they removed unemployment benefits and they reduced the government employee wages to 50% or something. That means all government jobs, people, they were getting only 50% salary. Cutting programs for poor, and that means they stopped all welfare programs. Revenue side, they increased income taxes, especially on the rich people, and targeting tax fraud and tax evasion. If you change, I imagine tax evasion, as of now it is a civil offence, you have to pay a fine. They changed it to criminal offence and you will go to jail. Then more people will pay tax. So this is how they will change the laws. Privatizing government owned businesses. These are the type of policies which are, you can say, austerity. Urgently they will try to do all these things so that they can get as much money as possible. This is austerity. You understood fiscal consolidation and austerity. Any questions so far? So we'll see a bit of tax for 5 minutes. After that, we'll continue tomorrow. Tomorrow. Okay. Okay, from taxation, GST probably we'll see tomorrow. After that, we'll start with budget and economic survey. So, we'll end the class here. Thank you.